always do that. There, we'll do that. Router's still not working, which actually is more frustrating than it sounds to me, because I have a lot of things in my life that kind of depend on this router working. I'm direct into the cable line right now on my computer. So I have internet on my computer and nothing else. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit... No, it's not the ISP. I have two theories. But I've also run through everything that I can think of off the top of my head. Granted, I've been working on this for the last hour and a half or so. It's also frustrating because I couldn't even use my phone to check stuff because my phone has no internet down here. I mean, yeah, I have, wireless, whatever, not wireless, satellite, I guess, internet. But here, ground floor of a three bedroom or 3-story house in the middle of a cloistered housing facility. Yeah, no, it's not happening. I have nothing. I basically do not have internet down here at the moment, except for my computer, obviously. So I haven't even researched the topics I was going to talk about today to the full extent I was going to. So this is going to be the worst Loreweek ever. But I do want to open with an announcement. There's this guy who's trying to take over my show, and I think he's succeeding because he's literally more popular than I am. His name's Reximus, and he is going to be at E3 next week. And that's awesome. So, first of all, I'm glad for him. I'm especially glad that he got that deal. And he's got, he wanted me to share a link. And I don't even remember the friggin' link because I lost internet while I was trying to test this. So hang on. Give me a second. Basically, he's asking for any suggestions about stuff to check out while he's there. Give me a second. I gotta find the damn link. Yeah, this is basically improv Loreweek right here. Let's see here. Here we go. Okay, where's his website? Or Rax could just link it. There you go. Where the hell's my music? So anyways, I should turn this back down since we're not streaming that anymore. There we go. So Rax will be at E3, which is awesome. He will also be on live. I believe just his voice. Please confirm or deny on that one. This is the wrong playlist. There we go. But he will be, one way or another, he will be live here with us next week's Loreweek. And we'll be like, hey, and be able to ask him and talk about his impressions. Basically a first-hand thing. Obviously, I will also be streaming the E3 stuff. All of that's already on the calendar. I'm pretty sure I'm up to date on all of that. I mean, they kept releasing new announcement dates and all that garbage. So that's a little bit of news. What other news? Kingdom Come Deliverance has officially announced exactly which DLCs they're getting out here. So we've got this one here. We've got From the Ashes DLC. I have no idea what that is. I didn't have time to research it. Then there's the Adventures of Hans Capon. I think we can assume what that one is. We've also got the Band of Bastards. No idea what that one is. And finally, A Woman's Lot, which will be coming out next year, which sounds kind of interesting. I'm curious what they're going to do with that, especially in Kingdom Come Deliverance. They are also coming out with a hardcore mode, which, as I think I made clear during the review, although some people seem to disagree with this statement of fact, I'm in favor of that idea. I wouldn't play it myself, but I'm in favor of it. They're also going to release a making of, a new tournament mode, a new combat academy, and finally, probably their last thing they're going to push out, and all the last part is free, DLC. They're going to be, or not DLC, mod support. They're going to be releasing mod support. So that's cool. But the actual DLCs, the expansion stuff, that's not going to be free. I would choose Witcher 3 or God of War 4 of that list, by the way. There's also... so... We had technically 4, but really 3 new... we'll get there, Max Time. We'll get there. We will technically have... God, my brain is gone! We had 3 new Pokemon games technically announced. Really, we had 2 new Pokemon games announced last week, which is neat. We have Pokemon Let's Go, 2 versions of that, of course, and then Pokemon It's a Piece of Crap. Pokemon Quest, that's what it's called. Now, Gary, yes, right, hey, maybe you can help me think of whatever the hell I'm missing here. So, sorry guys, give me a second. Middle of usage, right? Middle of usage, internet drops out, router stops acknowledging connection from the landline. Router is still not acknowledging connection from landline. Rebooting router does not help. Resetting router does not help. Rebooting modem does not help. Landline still works to computer, which is what I'm on right now. My router is disconnected. Tried releasing and renewing, tried all of the really basic stuff, tried some of the more in-depth stuff I could think of. I am out of ideas. Now I'm also kind of out of it. This is what I woke up to, basically. Yeah, I am at the step of trying to return this thing, which is going to suck, because this is not a cheap router. I actually bought a very nice router, so that I would have a very nice router. It's a Linksys WRT32X, for anybody curious. Yes, I can ping the router when the computer is connected to the router, but the router utterly disacknowledges the landline, which is connecting up to the modem upstairs. If it's physically burnt out, we got a friggin' problem. Basically, if this is a physical issue, then I am at the step of trying to convince Amazon to let me replace this thing. So, that's possible. Oh, by the way, I want to stress that this happened in mid-usage. I was in the middle of doing something.
Oh, welcome. Pay close attention. Hopefully you'll learn something.
I was in the middle. Who just donated? I was in the middle of using it, and then... It's from Emperor Valerian. I hope I don't have to put it towards that, but that may be where we're going here. Thank you very much, Emperor Valerian. I do very much appreciate your support. And that may literally be where that goes to, so I appreciate it, especially right now. Where the hell is my funding stuff? I moved the... Whoops. That's not... Where's the goddamn funding thing? There it is. Okay. There we go. Thank you again. Correct, Gary. And since dropout, it has not been able to even grab the connection at all to verify that as well. This is too loud. I'm sorry. Let's go back to the default. Let's go back to the default music. No, Gary. I mean, it was not allowing me to even attempt it. Now I could, so that's through command line. I could actually pull up the router's configuration through 192.yada yada, but And I could interact with it. It was still acknowledging interaction, but I could not actually ping it. I am always wired into the router, at least with the computer. Everything else is the wireless stuff. And there's multiple. You could say that I'm filled with fear over this situation. Thank you very, very much, Tokyo Vampire. As ever, those Twitch Prime subs are very much appreciated and very helpful. Thank you. I could access the management page, but I could not ping it. Correct. 192. Yada yada. I could double check that, but that would require stopping the stream. That... I have to be honest, I only tried that once, and I don't remember what the results are, if I'm being 100% honest. Past tense, Venters. They have auctioned off some of the movie props. Which is a shame, because obviously I wouldn't be able to afford any of that, but if I could, it would have been cool to buy some of them. I can connect to the router, as I just described. Its log is worthless. The last logged event it has is in November. Hi, Corwin. God, my head hurts. Hey, do you want me to check the ping thing? I'm gonna have to take everything down to do that. But I can do that, because I need this router working. Yes, Gary. I still have it up right here. It is currently default to 192. Yada yada. It is a Linksys WRT32X, Larian. A very new, very nice router. That aside from one really stupid issue has been really great. Correct, Mikes, and the router cannot acknowledge that connection at all. Doesn't even see it. Hello, tricksters. Sorry, we're doing a little bit of on-the-fly diagnosis today. I do remember that, Berenian. God, my brain is not working. At all. Some of you might be wondering why our next topic is going to be Fallout 76, to which I say, we'll get there. What I talk about right now, what I want to talk about right now, is that in the middle of the night I was having trouble sleeping. Part of why I'm kind of out of it right now. And I visually recreated an entire scene from FF6 in my head as if I was doing a television show or a movie or whatever. And I really liked what I did with it, so I got up in the middle of the night, turned my computer on, and recorded the whole thing, like me talking out and trying to present with my hands the directing and the presentation of the scene. Do you guys want to see that? That's up to you. It's awful and stupid, and literally it was just like, you know, just me standing there in my PJs. Don't worry, I'm fully dressed. I dress fully in PJing because it's comfort. Oh yeah, it's very awful and it's very stupid. There you go. I uploaded it last night. Well, actually, I uploaded it today, but Whatever, you get the idea. I made it last night. Feel free to watch that whenever, and tell me how stupid and awful it was. I just felt like sharing. I don't wear pants, no. I wear shorts, long shorts, specifically. Below the knee shorts. If it's not below the knee, it's not shorts. Okay, Garrett. What else did I have in my pre-ramble? God. This morning, I swear. Did you guys know Pubg is suing Fortnite? I'm sure most of you are. I'm serious. And if you don't understand why that is amazingly retarded, and I don't like to use that word in general, so let me make it clear that I say that with near total sincerity. Pubg is licensed, like the game Pubg is a game that was crafted with purchased licensed materials from the company that makes Fortnite. Just to add to the dozens of other reasons it's stupid. Like, it's already amazingly stupid, but then it just tumbles over itself and, like, it multiplies its stupidity. It's not additive stupidity, it's multiplicative stupidity. Yes, you can go to the, I don't remember the name of the site. You can go to the site that the company owns, the Fortnite's company owns, and I can't think of their names right now either, but you can actually go there, and you can be like, hey, and you can look at their store-bought assets, and you can see Epic Games, thank you. You can go to the store-bought assets page for their engine and find Pubg assets in there. Obviously, I'm saying that incorrectly. It is assets that Pubg purchased to use. Someone tweeted something, which I found hysterical. It's like, man, I think it was Angry Joe, actually, of all people. It's like, man, it's almost like Pubg might have become a better game if not for the fact that they spent the last months wringing whatever goodwill they had left in stupid lawsuits. I hope they die. Like, not the people. Obviously, that's horrible, but I mean the company. I hope the Pubg company dies. I hope this self-destructs them hard. Oh yeah, that's the other funny thing. Tencent actually owns both. Not a controlling share. I looked that up. But Tencent actually owns part of Fortnite and Pubg. Which just makes this whole thing even funnier. Like, this is why this is not a news topic, because this is just, there's no news here. This is just, no, I have never played Pubg or Fortnite. I have basically offered to my audience, do you want me to? And everyone near universally, like 98% of my viewers said no. So I didn't. Besides, it's not my thing. I wouldn't enjoy it, I guarantee it. I'm not into competitive PvPing. It's not my thing. I am, however, filled with tremendous fear. Thank you very, very much, Ginji. As ever, those Twitch Prime subs are very much appreciated, very helpful, thank you. But not these! Because Jinja Ninja is filling me with even more fear. Oh, I shouldn't do that. My throat's been giving me issues all morning. Thank you, Jinja Ninja. Welcome to the 1 year club. Yeah, guys, we've been, well, I can't think of the name, not partnered, but the step below that, and then partnered for a year now. Can you believe that? We're at the 1 year anniversary. That's just a weird thought to me. I mean, I've been streaming for almost 5 years now. Anyways, so what else do we got for not news? EVE Online, for those of you not aware, has affiliate, thank you, has decided to add a pseudo PvE mode with something called Into the Abyss. Now, I wanted to do more research on this, but I spent my whole morning working on my router, but what I've been able to determine is it's this very interesting risk versus reward kind of a thing. It's also weird because it's developer-generated content, which is really weird in EVE Online. Like, that's not a thing that's supposed to be a thing in EVE Online, right? The way it works, from my extremely limited understanding, there's this place called the Abyss. And basically, you can go in there, and you decide how far into the Abyss you want to go. The further in, the more dangerous, and the less chance of getting back out. If you die in there, you lose whatever you gathered in there. So you slip in, yeah, like a microscopic percent, Anthony. Like the tutorial quests. I've played EVE Online, by the way, more than once, actually. So you slip in, and it's like, all right, yeah, and then you can just like grab a bunch of loot or gear or resources or whatever. And then, okay, we're back out. Whew, okay. Or you could go, yeah, and die. You know, it's actually kind of a neat concept because it is effectively a gold fountain. Now, I know what you're thinking. What the hell is a gold fountain? For those of you not aware of MMO linguistics, that's the wrong word, MMO lingo, there are two concepts that are actually mandatory to the construction of a properly designed MMO. Those are gold sinks and gold fountains. Terminology is a better word. So a gold sink, everyone knows what a gold sink is. Or at least most people know what a gold sink is. A gold sink is something that removes currency from the economy. As in, if you go to a vendor in World of Warcraft, I'll use the most basic example here, and if you repair your stuff, the gold you spend isn't cycled back into the economy. It is removed from the economy. Now, that's actually very important. Yeah, the auction house cut is another example, is purchasing mounts, purchasing new skills back in the day, purchasing flight skill, you know, all that stuff. That removes currency from the economy, which is very important. You have to have gold sinks in order to manage the actual economy, because a MMO economy isn't actually like a real-life economy. It's a closed circuit. It's a contained environment. And so all of this money is the money that is cycling through the player base, and only the player base. And that's it. The actual economy of an MMO is everything within here. And pulling money out of this is 100% mandatory for any MMO that wants to go anywhere, because otherwise this bubble will never stop shrinking, because money will just keep cycling in as players barter or change with each other and continue to procure money from the second concept, which is what I was just talking about, a gold fountain. A gold fountain is something that introduces money into the economy. Now, I've heard tons and tons of people talk about gold sinks. But I've never heard of anyone talk about fear before. Thank you, Taitu. I appreciate that. I appreciate that support. Thank you very much. I don't see you around on stream as much as I'd like, but thank you. Gold sinks are what most people talk about. Very few people talk about gold fountain, but a gold fountain is also absolutely mandatory, because if there is no gold fountain, then there is no economy. If you are not, you have to produce. Basically, you are producing currency from nothing. You are just generating currency, you know, from a non-existent source or whatever, and putting it into the player economy. Otherwise, there is no player economy whatsoever. Now, I have heard some MMOs try to literally not have a player economy, and it's never worked. Ever. But anyways, getting back to EVE Online, that's the entire purpose of this. Obviously, mining is the most predominant and gold fountain within EVE Online. This is trying to produce a completely new source of a gold fountain, which is based a little bit more on direct interaction with the player, that doesn't involve mining and then walking away from the computer. And I think at the very least, on a conceptual level, speaking as someone who hasn't played EVE Online in like 3 years at this point, I like that idea. I like that idea. See, the only way a lack of gold fountain could work, Necro, is if you have an MMO whose entire design is built around not having an economy. Now, it's worth noting that an economy is not just literal currency. Anybody who's played Asheron's Call, Gary, can talk about this. Because, yeah, there's Purials in Asheron's Call, and they have their own purpose. But then there was tons of other stuff that functioned, effectively was, the economy of Asheron's Call. You know, back when we used to trade motes, or six sturdy iron keys, or singularity keys, or, you know, whatever. There have been, hell, golem hearts has been an economy thing. You know, you're going to have... If you're not going to have an actual currency in your MMO, you're still probably going to have tradable goods of some type or another. And if you do, you have an economy, whether you want one or not. So that's the kind of thing that the designers need to sit and think about very carefully walking into it. That can still work, by the way. I firmly believe that having an MMO which literally does not have a currency, no Purials, no gold, no credits, no ISK, whatever, is something that you could do. But if you're doing that, you need to then very carefully decide if you're having tradable items at all, which I do think you should, for reference, and then how you're going to make that system work, and what common items you're going to have, and that sort of a thing. Because in that case... yeah, the economy is going to turn into the Diablo 2 example. Because Diablo 2 basically did have an economy. Let's be clear, a currency, the very concept, the idea of money, is that it is a neutral, universally valued good. That's it. That's all that money is. This goes back to like the 1800s, when this concept really started getting stride. Or maybe it's 1700s, I don't remember exactly. Because... if I'm looking around my desk here. I suppose I have nothing on my desk that would qualify, which actually kind of makes my point. Nothing here is a universally accepted good. Nothing I have here I could trade to you that you could trade to him or you could trade to her, right? Except for this. This right here is something that you could trade to him and you could trade to her. That all of you value. That's all money is. I could talk about money for days. I'm getting way off topic. What else do I got here? Speaking of money, anyone hear about Star Citizen's Legatus pack? Hang on, let me look up the exact number. There it is. So, for those of you not 100% aware or are not reading chat, there's this new Legatus pack. Now, let's start by saying that the Legatus pack is only available to people who already have the concierge status in Star Citizen. That means you have already spent 4 digits. You have to go over the $1,000 mark in order to qualify for this pack. The pack itself is $27,000. That's basically a year's wages for me. Like, gross. That's if I didn't have to pay taxes. Actually, I think I make a little more than that, but you get my point. That is how much money you can dump on Star Citizen. A game that's not out yet, and by my definition, has no content. And I believe, let me triple check this here. Where's I actually can't access the page itself because I'm not a concierge. It comes with 117 ships, which are all unlocked. You get all those ships, guys. Here we go. Okay, so it comes with 117 ships and 163 extra cosmetic stuff. And that's it, apparently. Oh, nope. It also comes with the game soundtrack, Squadron 6 soundtrack, a digital star map, the making of Star Citizen, a book, and you start with 20,000 in-game currency. We could actually make a topic of this. I'm not going to. That's why I'm quiet. I'm debating with myself if I want to make this a topic. The reason I don't want to make a topic out of this is because this gets into philosophy, as in economic philosophy, as in how much do you believe in a free market concept, right? That's where we have to go in order to really discuss this matter. All I'm going to say is, if you have that kind of money to burn on a video game, then I want to slug you. I'm just gonna say that as openly and bluntly as I can. Like, I'm usually all in favor of the concepts of, you know, it's your money, whatever brings you happiness or joy, that's your thing, right? Like, if you want to blow money on something I don't agree with or I don't care about, I don't care as long as it actually brings you happiness, as long as it legitimately brings you joy. Cool. I'm with that, right? Yeah, as Gary says, that's really just about return on investment. But $27,000 for what is literally and figuratively cosmetics in one video game, that there's a line. There is a line there, right? There is a line of acceptability which you have just lunged over. Just woo, right? I know people, in fact, I bet there's people in chat who hesitate to spend $15 a month on a game. And I want to stress this. I know people who would legitimately enjoy the content, the return on investment that $15 a month would get them. Right? Like, I know people who are hesitating to sub to WoW or to FF14 because, yeah, I'd enjoy it, but $15 a month, I don't know. Right? But yeah, even that, which has a defined and valued return on investment, is still the kind of thing that people hesitate to and pushes some people away entirely. The idea of dumping, like, it's like I was showing that the other month, several months ago. I'm not going to pull it up, and you know what, I don't even care. But because I have no internet on my phone. But there was, you remember when I showed off some stupid mobile game, right? And it was like, hey, there's like a pack to buy currency and cosmetics for $100 in a mobile game. Right? Like, there's lines of acceptability here. There's lines of ridiculous that I feel that gaming, not just gaming, this obviously isn't exclusive to gaming, are just lunging over. 1,800 months. What is 1,800 months in years? I don't feel like doing the math in my head. Now, you know what? I wish I had access to this information. I wish I knew how many people bought this Legatus pack. I wish I knew how many people plunked down 30 grand on a video game. I've been playing video games since as long as I can remember. Some of my earliest memories from when I was 3 are of playing video games with my dad. I still, if I was rich, if I was swimming in money, I would not drop $27,000 on this. I would not do that. That's stupid. 150 years. Or 150 people could get a year subscription to WoW. I could sub pretty much every one of my main viewers right now to WoW for a year for that kind of money. Join us, Gary. If the new expansion's good. Which we don't know if it is yet or not. I'm sorry, I've been rambling about this way too long. I apologize. Let's move on. God, I've been talking for 35 minutes now. If you already play WoW, I don't know, $27,000. Words. There's more that we could talk about there that I don't want to even get into. What else we got? Right. So before we talk about Fallout 76, I have like no news really this week, to be honest with you. How many of you care about Star Trek? Oh, hey, Jonathan. Wow, that's a lot of no's in chat. Well, I just thought I'd share something really quick. Obviously, we're doing the STO premiere run Wednesday, I think? I don't know, it's on the website. It's on the website. I have finished watching Star Trek Discovery's first season. And I'm not doing any videos about it. Let me start with that. I did want to give my opinion because so many people had asked me about it, though. Do you want my honest opinion about Star Trek Discovery? I only briefly heard about it, Gary. You really do? Okay. I'm going to be 100% honest. I'm not going to hold anything back. For good or for ill. I've been debating how to phrase this for days now. It feels on paper like 8/10 out of what I've always wanted out of Star Trek, and is completely soulless. Now, I hate to speak in such a vague term, but as I found myself going through Star Trek Discovery, I found myself not caring. And I was watching the connecting points of continuity and the developing points of the characters and how the plots were presenting themselves. And as I just kept going through, I just kept not caring. I couldn't even name most of the characters right now for you, and I know that's kind of a joke for me. But I don't see anything. There's not a lot of very good dynamic between the actors. There's not really good chemistry on screen. There's not Lorca. I remember Lorca's cool. I'm not going to spoil anything. All I'm going to say is that I feel like they completely wasted Lorca. Yeah, it feels like someone who has heard of Star Trek decided to go ahead and make a story about Star Trek. It is competently... What's the opposite of executed? It is competently thought out. It is legitimately competently thought out. There's some clear effort being put into the background of events, into making it planned. It feels like they really did think this out long term. I do feel that that plan is comic-y. Again, I'm not going to spoil anything because I don't have the spoiler warning up, but I'm just going to say I really feel like some of what they did with that overarching plan feels like something I would see in an average or a below average comic book. Something that's just kind of, and then, right? And aside from Lorca, who really is the exception for me, with a couple of occasional guest actors, I just don't care about any of the characters. I don't care about the war. I don't care about the individual plots of the episode. I struggle to remember some of the episodes because they had an utter lack of impact on me. It felt like episodes that were built by committee And that's why I'm so weirded out by this. And that's why I was very hesitant to give my opinion, because I can't actually say that Star Trek Discovery is bad. I have seen bad Star Trek. But is it better or worse than the animated series? I suppose that's a matter of opinion. Because what is worse? Something that's bad or something that's empty? And I mean this question sincerely. This actually came up just last week. The outrageous Economies. This will come up in the future with Shades of Grey. What is worse? Something that is actively bad or something that is simply empty or boring or disinteresting? Because in my opinion, the animated series, with a couple of exceptions, is bad. Just bad. But Discovery, I have no desire to ever rewatch that show as of right now. Season 1, I should clarify. I will probably give Season 2 a watch. I mean, I already dumped the money on it, right? So I will probably go ahead and make the effort to watch Season 2 when it finishes coming out. I subbed in to CBS's bullcrap and then watched and then unsubbed. So I will probably do the same with Season 2. I will probably give it that chance. But I want to say something. And I want to stress that this is not a... You know what? Anybody who's going to attack me over this is going to attack me for my opinion anyways, regardless of if I explain this logically and conclusively. So I'm just going to give my opinion. You guys know me. Nostalgia does not matter for these kind of effects. Okay? So let's take the nostalgia argument and throw it out the window. Okay? Season 1 of TOS, TNG, DS9, and Voyager all has bad crap in it. Every one of those has just blah. But in every single one of those, and I've re-gone through almost every single one of those recently. The furthest one back is Voyager. Obviously, I did that a few years ago. Every single one of those still made me care. Either because of the wonderful and amazing chemistry between the characters and the actors, like in Voyager, because of the interesting ideas or trying to stretch in new directions, like Deep Space Nine, or because of the presentation of a pseudo-continuity and a development of a new mythos, like TNG, and again, some excellent actors. Every single... And TOS, some of my favorite episodes of TOS are Season 1. Every single one of these did something to make me care, despite the dreck. And that is why I'm so weirded out by my opinion on Discovery, because I just do not care. I've been deliberately leaving Enterprise out of this, because I haven't seen Enterprise in a very long time. It's the Star Trek show I haven't seen the longest. The last time I watched Enterprise would have been 2006. I can actually name the year. So, 12 years ago. You know, it's been a little bit. It's been a little bit. I also want to say, if I could just be so bold, one last comment about Star Trek Discovery. The twists were stupid and predictable. Like, for those of you not aware, I actually predicted some of those twists before I watched the show. Before I actually subbed to CBS's All Access and actually sat down and watched the show. They were really, really obvious. And it was the worst kind of obvious, because it was obvious, but they weren't wanting it to be obvious. It was Khan into darkness all over again. Yeah, spoiler. It's not a spoiler. That's my point. It was so blatantly obvious. Again, I'm not going to spoil them here. I'm not going to get into that. It's just... Okay? And the worst part, in my opinion, is that the three major spoilers didn't do anything. Like, it was his sled should mean something. You know, Empire Strikes Back. That twist was powerful. Changed the entire dynamic of the previous movie and the existing movie. Utterly affected Luke's character arc and made the impact of his decision all the more powerful. I mean, I hate to go to Empire Strikes Back, but it's one most of you know. That's why I'm doing it. That's what you do with a plot twist. You make the plot twist matter. You make it impact the show or the characters, the setting, or something. But yeah, it changed the whole franchise. That's very true. But and again, I'm not going to spoil them, but each of the 3 major plot twists, what did they change? Like, the relationship, I guess. I really got to put an asterisk to that one. Now, twice now, Leo Tamer has asked, should Star Trek continue? Now, that is a... Yeah, I know, Palayan. Should Star Trek continue? I will go ahead and say that that is not the kind of thing that I have the authority to comment on. However, as someone who's been a Star Trek fan since he was 5, thanks to Mom, Lore Mom, I think that there's nothing that necessarily means a franchise needs to die, per se, so long as you are willing to, A, do something good with it, and or, B, do something new with it. Now, I stress the way I said that because Star Trek Discovery, let's be honest, is actually something relatively new for Star Trek. The only other time we've seen something like this is actually with Enterprise Season 3 and 4. And even those were a little bit different than what we're seeing here. We've never really seen Star Trek take this serialized approach to storytelling before, and I do believe that that has been to Star Trek's detriment, my opinion. We've never really seen them sit down and say, this is our story arc for this season, well in advance before. But you still have to be good. And I don't think Star Trek Discovery is good. I can't say it's bad, but I do not think it's good. My opinion. So that's my opinion on Discovery. Late DS9. The last 9 episodes of DS9 count for that, but I would basically say no, to be blunt. Do I think Discovery could become good? Yes. But I do think that they are starting from a massive detriment. I think that they are starting from someplace. It's the starting downhill thing. I've talked about this so many times. Like, you can make just about any idea work, but certain ideas, you're down here, you already have this uphill battle just to start. And Discovery is at that position, and technically twice, actually. Not just because it is a prequel, which is already a problem, but because it was never supposed to be set in the original continuity. Like, that was the original idea, was to have it set in the Abrams-verse. And then that didn't happen because of legal issues. And then they were like, well, we'll set it in our own new universe, a third continuity, a reboot. And then there was a massive pushback against that, and the suits vetoed that. So then they, by the point in time at which they had decided to go ahead and affix this to existing, prime continuity, they had already done most of that work. Because, remember, they planned out the season in advance. And remember, that happens way before the show ever comes out. Like, way before. Way over here. So they couldn't just redo this. They'd already done all that prep work. And if I could be so bold, I think that shows. It really shows that this does not fit in Star Trek. And I'm not necessarily saying that is a bad thing. It is a bad thing because they're trying to force it to fit into Star Trek. And I think that's where the problem lies. Now, someone mentioned, where was it? Wilson just mentioned they should have just left it in the Mirror Universe. One of my earliest theories was that the whole show was in the Mirror Universe. Now, this is wrong. That's not really a spoiler. But I do legitimately feel like that would have been their out, right? Like, that would have been their way out of this dilemma they were in. Just take this whole story arc and shift it over into the Mirror Universe and leave it there, right? In that way, you barely have to even interact with the main universe. How many times has the Mirror Universe interacted with the Prime Universe? Not counting STO. I think it's like 5 times, something like that. It is not that often. I honestly feel like that would have freed them up to do their own thing more and more cohesively. I agree, Luxia. Wrath of Khan was a miracle. It really was. But DS9, so there's the original series had 1 episode. Enterprise had a 2-parter, but 1 episode. And then I believe DS9 had 3. I'm not sure of that exact number. There's like the Crack in the Mirror episode, then there's the Emperor's New Cloak episode. There's the episode where the prophets... No, that's the different one. I know there's a 3rd one in there somewhere. I don't remember how many. DS9 was pretty much the Mirror Universe show. Otherwise, the Mirror Universe barely interacts. There was never a Mirror Universe TNG, not counting the comic, obviously. There's never a Mirror Universe Voyager, etc. Anyways, that's my opinion on Mirror Universe. Oh, that's true. Barial was one there. I already mentioned Enterprise. Enterprise, TOS, and that's it, basically. Other than DS9's thing. I barely remember DS9's Mirror Universe episodes because I didn't like them that much. I liked the first one. I remember liking the first one because they did some good character stuff with Kira. And then I remember the other ones being there. I actually do agree. Well, actually, I think TOS did the Mirror Universe very well, my opinion. And I think Enterprise did the Mirror Universe very well. And I know that's weird. But no, I really do feel Enterprise's Mirror Universe episode was awesome. I enjoy it tremendously. It's one of my favorite Enterprise episodes overall. Like, say, 5th or so, something like that. Wow, we've just been... I haven't even changed my thing here. I'm just going to take off the current topic thing. Whatever, let's just move on to my next not really a topic. Let's talk about Fallout 76. Alright, we're done. Okay, so moving on to our next topic. No, let's talk about this. Let's really talk about this. Because I hate the fact that all I've been getting on every news feed for all frickin' week is Fallout 76. Fallout 76. Fallout 76. I've seen so much fake news this week about Fallout 76, it's actually been pissing me off. I've commented on this already on stream. And I stress that word, fake news. People have been reporting rumors and theories as in, and they're doing it like, this is what Fallout 76 is going to be. PAX asked me, what's Fallout 76? Like, actual. And I said, all right, let me go ahead and talk about what Fallout 76 is. It's probably a game that was made by the Austin team, although we don't know that for certain. It's probably set on the East Coast, probably in West Virginia, although we don't know that for certain. It's probably a multiplayer game, although we don't know that for certain. What do we actually know? Let's take away the probablys. What do we actually know? It is being developed by someone within Bethesda Softworks. There's 3 total studios there, but functionally the 2 main studios. And it's called Fallout 76. And that's what we know! What? That's it. Everything else is speculation and rumor. We can infer a few things from the teaser they gave. We can actually. That's a separate topic. Max time. We'll get to that. I suppose that's true. I could say that we know they will give more information at E3. So when's the Bethesda thing? Hang on, I've got it on my website. But we don't know if that's when the game happens, Spirit. Do we? We can infer probablys from the teaser, but we don't know facts about the game. Looks like Bethesda is 9:30 p.m. next Sunday. Blah. Okay, that's gonna suck. I'm gonna be up really late that night. So late a week from today, we will be covering Bethesda's presentation. Yay. E3, the first thing I will be covering for E3 will be this coming Saturday, next Saturday. at 2 in the afternoon. That'll be EA's presentation. They're usually first. Then next Sunday at 4 p.m. This is all Eastern Standard Time, by the way. At 4 p.m. Next Sunday, we'll have the Microsoft, where we will learn about 4K exclusives. And then we'll have the Bethesda one at 9:30, again, EST. Then next Monday, so a week from tomorrow, at 1 p.m. we'll have the Square Enix conference. That's weird. Square Enix usually doesn't even have a separate conference. At 4 p.m. we'll have Ubisoft. At 6 p.m. we'll have the PC show. At 9 p.m. we'll have Sony. And then next Tuesday, we will have at noon, Nintendo. Yeah, Square Enix very rarely has their own presentation thing at E3. I believe it's been 3 years since they've done it. 3 or 4, something like that. Which brings me to my final real topic. Before we do that, let's talk about Fallout 76. Let's talk about one other thing about Fallout 76. Because there's 2 things that need to be talked about when it comes to Fallout 76. Really, like legitimately needs to be talked about. They're taking pre-orders already. Now, in my opinion, that is both good and bad. I want to discuss both sides of these. Let's talk about the bad first, because the bad is obvious. What is Fallout 76? Quiz time! What do we know about Fallout 76? It's a game with the name Fallout 76 made by someone inside of the Bethesda Softworks. That's what we know. So, what we have... You know, Gary's true. We don't technically know it's a game. But I think we can say with a high certainty that it is, in fact, a game. If it's a TV show, I'm gonna laugh. So, if it was a mobile game, good lord. So the reason why this is a bad thing is, duh! They are literally pulling an insurance scam on us. And if you don't know what I mean by that, then that's awesome. I hope you never have to deal with this. Some insurance companies, this is not a joke, will actually sell you insurance without telling you what it covers or does. You have to buy it, and then you find out what you get out of the product you have just bought. I call it a scam because even though it is not legally a scam, by my definition, that's a frickin' scam. For reference, not every insurance company does that, but that is a thing. I've experienced that myself, and you know, I'm sure plenty of other people have too. I can't be the only person. I'm not the only person, right, guys? No, seriously though, it's bullcrap. So that's messed up. The fact that they're trying to literally sell us something that we don't know what it is. There's another reason that's messed up, and all I'm going to say is loot box and move on. Because, I mean, if you really think about it, logically speaking, that's kind of what loot boxing is, right? I don't know what's in there. What's in there? Oh, God, here's $20. What's in here? Oh, it's a bit of lint. Let's talk about the only reason why this is good. Because there is a reason why this could be good. I don't think it is, for reference. Really? How many of you have ever bought a game because it is a such and such game? How many of you have ever bought a game because it's being made by a particular studio? You already know where I'm going with this. Like, I'm seeing a lot of people saying yes in chat here, or me, rather. Now, I don't have a lot of faith in Bethesda as a developer, and I don't have a lot of faith in the Fallout line. But if I don't know, a new Mega Man game was being announced, and they just said, there's a new Mega Man coming out, would you like to buy it? There is a reasonable chance I would go ahead and pay for that, even not knowing much about the game, because it's a Mega Man game. Once upon a time, I could say that there are certain companies that I would just buy games from because they were pushed out by that company. My first video ever on my show was about the difference between development teams and development companies, and how once upon a time I used to trust the Square label, for example. I saw a game by Square and I got it. I usually rented it at that particular point in my life, but the point remaining, there was just an automatic confidence in that. And that's how I got disappointed a few times. There is a level of consumer trust that can be perceived as a good thing. Now, the reason I say that I don't think this is a good thing in this exact case is because this is a level of consumer trust that is being presumed. In my opinion, marketing-wise, business-wise, right? Let me get my business glasses on here. Business lore here. In the meeting room. I'd get my coat, but it's in the closet. I'd be like, alright guys, we got this new Fallout 76 game. We're going to push out a teaser right 1 week before E3. Okay, there's actually nothing wrong with that, really. And then we're going to release a little bit more information at E3, and then we're going to release pre-orders. And people are like, wait, I've got a great... Hang on. Let me put on my I'm stupid glasses. Which is a box of Kleenex. Wait! Business lore. I've got an idea. Why don't we go ahead and release pre-orders after the teaser, but before the E3 announcement? Then business lore turns to him and says, you're fired. Because that's stupid. You don't presume consumer trust. Even if that consumer trust was there, your attitude about it removes some of that trust, removes some of that confidence. You don't just say, hey, we're making a new Fallout game. You want to buy it? No. You say, we're making a new Fallout game. We'll be talking about it at E3. Then you talk about it at E3. Then you say, you want to buy it. Bam! You know what irritates me? Is even from a purely economic, purely money perspective, what they did does not make sense. They have actively hindered consumer trust in the hopes of gaining a few early sales. What the crap? Oh, I remember that one, Takoida. I remember that one so well. I didn't buy Daikatana when it came out. I was going to. And then the marketing campaign made me not. How many of you remember the Daikatana marketing campaign? Real question. That was a mess. Daikatana is a terrible game. If you don't know more, it's fine. It was this whole thing. Oh my god. It was probably one of the earliest times in video gaming history where we had a massive artificial hype build-up to a terrible game. Like, I'm sure that happened before then to some extent or another, but Daikatana was huge and widespread, and an enormous amount of money was being blown on garbage and on a terrible ad campaign. That's a good question, Necro. I'm not sure they will have a choice because of the way regulations work right now. I got nothing else this week. Like, there were other things I was gonna... Oh, right, no, there's actually one other thing. There's actually one other thing I want to talk about, sorry. Pokemon, right? Let's talk about Pokemon really quick. So, first of all, there is a new Pokemon game that is out right now. Now, it's out on the Switch, which is dumb. let's just start with that. It is dumb because it's a mobile game. Now, I know what you're saying. Oh, Lore, you just hate mobile gaming. No, let me really get this across. So the way the game works, and I did actually play it for a bit, is it's a Switch exclusive for the moment. It's coming out on the phone in like July or something like that. June or July. I get the 2 months confused. That would be very funny, Leo Tamer. So it's like okay, we've got to scan this area. Okay, you're gonna have to spend some energy to scan this area. Okay, you only have so much energy per day. You have a max of energy, and your energy slowly restores over real time. Or you could spend money to restore your energy. And then you send out your Pokemon team. They can level, of course, but you don't actually command them. You send out the team, and they just kind of run around and basically auto mode. You have no real control over them, not really. Instead, you can set it to auto mode, which takes even more control away from you. Or occasionally, you can push a button which makes them use a thing. So, yeah. Now, my biggest complaint about this game so far, as of right now, is that it's on the Switch, because I really legitimately think it shouldn't be. I think this is the kind of game that's perfect for playing, if you like it, no judgment. You can play it for a few minutes, then obviously you're out of energy, so you wait, so then you stop, right? Like, to me that just sounds like a phone game. Like you're sitting at the bus stop, right? Or you're waiting for your order at a food place or whatever. And then, all right, well, I'm done. So you put it away, and then you go back to your life and do whatever, and then like a couple hours later, it's like, man, I'm at my lunch break. You go back to playing it a bit. This is what I mean when I say this is a phone game. Or at least it conceptually, it feels like a phone game. I really don't understand why it's on the Switch. But what I really want to talk about is the other one. Pokemon Let's Go. Now, I haven't decided really what I think about Pokemon Let's Go yet. Because Pokemon Let's Go, it's clearly using the same engine as Sun and Moon. Polished a bit, better resolution, obviously. But clearly the same engine. And has some weird interactivity with Pokemon Go? Which I'm not sure what I think of. I actually do still know people who play Pokemon Go. I mentioned it to them, and they were like, yeah, that sounds cool. Can I use your Switch when you buy it to transfer stuff? And I'm like, yeah, okay. Sure. And of course, it comes with the little Pokeball thing, which you can carry around with you. My biggest concern, and I don't have answers to these questions because I didn't have time to research it, my biggest concern is how much of the game can be played like this, and how much of it has to be played like this. In other words, I want to know if it has mandatory motion control, basically. If it doesn't, we're with it. If it has optional motion control, I'm with it. I don't like mandated stuff. It also feels like a cool... Like it does look like it's a... I don't know how else to phrase this. A full Pokemon game. Like, here's a zone, and here's an RPG... You have RPG elements where you go around, you do quests, and you advance a plot, and blah, 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 right? It's a Pokemon game. But they do really want to keep pushing this idea of people directly and personally interacting with their Pokemon, which I'm totally with. I like that idea. I like that idea back in Gen 2, I like there's a screenshot of someone riding an Onix with like an Eevee on their head, and I'm like, yes, that's awesome. Yes, it's also going to have some kind of co-op. I heard about that. I didn't have time to research it. I'm assuming we will have more to talk about this next Tuesday, when they probably show this off live during the E3 event and during the Treehouse event, which I will be streaming here, just as an heads up. So, at the very least, I'm pretty excited about it. It looks cool. It is also worth noting that this is not the Switch Pokemon game that is still in the hints stage, right? There is still another Pokemon game that is going to be coming out on the Switch. This is not that. So, whether it's good or bad, up to you. I just thought I'd share that. The main thing I want to know is the amount of content that's going to be in Let's Go. That's my biggest question right there. How much is there going to be to do? If it's literally just, here's an area to go around and catch Pokemon, I will probably not actually pick that up, because to me that's just not worth it. You know, no judgment, none of that. But I look at this and I'm just like, I want to go quest. I want to go play a Pokemon game, right? So we'll see. We'll see. I hope we will learn more next Tuesday. You mean 150 max time, or is it 152? What are you tweeting me, Hazardous? Unless you're talking about the Fox News thing, in which case I just laughed at that. Hang on, let me check my tweets. It has to be that, because that's the only video that I've been tweeted at for like a long time. So, no, basically. I mean, I've already talked about that topic. I have nothing new to add to it. It's really, really simple. Comcast wants an international market. Bam! There you go. Could I theorize I've actually talked about the concept of a Pokemon MMO many, many times. The biggest problem... my opinion, in developing a Pokemon MMO is deciding what you're playing as. Because, as weird as this may sound, I think that just taking a Pokemon core game, or whatever the hell you want to call it, and dumping it into an MMO format will not work. It is my opinion that will not work. For co-op, sure. For like... but I already talked about that as it is. Sure, I'll watch it later. You know, for co-op, sure. For grouping, you know, 4 players all working together, sure. But an MMO format needs something a little bit different than that. Go ahead, Hazardous. Now, we could make it so we play the trainers, or we could make it so we play the actual Pokemon. And I'm not sure which of those would be better. I've actually been torn about this topic for years at this point, because I've been thinking about Pokemon MMO since like BC era, right? So like 8 years at this point, something like that. It is also worth noting we can have both. One of the ideas that I've had, one of the crazier and weirder ideas I've had, is that you play a Pokemon trainer who has such and such stats, such and such equipment, such and such abilities, and then when you get into an actual Pokemon battle, you toss out the Pokemon and play as the Pokemon. Now, that's basically what you already do, but my point being, they could also go a completely different route with that, where you don't play your Pokemon at all, and instead all of the stats are semi-independent of that, or you could do a thing as where you just play as the Pokemon, and the trainer aspect isn't even a part of it, and there's a lot they can do story-wise with that. And my point being, that's the kind of thing that would need to be very much debated, and you know, let's figure this out, right? So, I don't know. I do think Pokemon would work as an MMO, I'm not sure how. So I do have a bit of a bonus thing for you guys. I've actually hinted at this already. If you give me a moment. Since I've just rambled all morning while being brain dead. I believe it's a 16 by 9. Let's go up here. This is something that I have not played. This is technically Premier Run territory. Yeah, of course, Cord. I thought I said yes, but I obviously did not. That is a weird resolution. Whatever, we'll live with it. Let's get rid of that, let's get rid of that, let's get rid of that. This is a very weird resolution. No, go ahead and ask, Court. I gotta do a little more setup. Yes, we did, Blue Wolf. God, I'm tired. So I haven't played this yet. This is not actually Bloodstained. This is the the prequel game to Bloodstained that was released to backers. Obviously, I am not a I am a backer of Bloodstained. Bloodstained Ritual of the Night is the full game. That's not out yet. Oh god, I forgot about the Solo movie. Ugh. I hate this morning. God damn it, I completely forgot about the Solo movie. No, we'll do it now. We'll do it now. We'll do it now. That's fine. I always do those at the end of the Loreweek anyways. Oh no, it wasn't that bad, but I'll get to that in a minute. For those of you who blah blah blah, spoiler, spoiler, blah blah blah, spoiler. Spoiler, blah blah blah, spoiler. Spoiler, 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 spoiler. Spoiler, super spoilers, Solo movie discussion. Spoilers, 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 spoilers. As soon as this switches over, I can't wait, because I know exactly what I want to say first, and I guarantee you I'm gonna get flack for this. Come on, update. As soon as the title updates back to the spoiler things. Usually takes a minute. Okay, there we go. I really liked the movie. I really liked the movie. I didn't like it quite as much as Rogue One, but I really enjoyed it. I was having a good time the whole time through. Bring it. Now, I did like it better than Last Jedi, yes. I'm not sure about Force Awakens. It's been a little bit since I've seen Force Awakens. I haven't seen Force Awakens since it came out. Now, yeah, of course, Gary. We're in spoiler territory. We got the thing up. We're good. We're good. Let's talk about three. I want to talk about three things before we really discuss the movie itself. First, I want to say that news outlets can die. Not the people, just the companies. For those of you not aware, I follow financial news a lot. I do it daily. And every single one of them has been sensationalizing the crap out of how much of a bomb Solo is, and how it's one of the most biggest financial flops in Star Wars history, and how it's a huge problem, and how Disney's gonna have to completely pull the plug on their movie plans in the future, and how it's a matter of Star Wars fatigue and blah 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 blah. I've heard people saying, I've had people saying that, oh my god, you know, we're just getting too much Star Wars in a short period of time. Which is the kind of thing we can factually prove is not true, by the way. People have been saying it's because it's a white male and nobody likes movies with white males as leads, which is another thing we can factually prove is not true, by the way. But I have just, so many people have just been leaping like ravenous little chihuahuas, or just on top of Solo, on financial sites and on geek sites. Just being like, oh my god, it's horrible. Now, let's talk reality. No, it did not sell as well as Pirates of the Caribbean 3. No, it did not sell as well as Solo. No, it did not have as good of an opening weekend as several other things. It did not sell as many tickets as a Star Wars movie generally will. Very true. That is 100% true. Calling it a bomb is ridiculous. It has actually, as of now, already made its money back. And doing that within its second weekend is not what we call a bomb. It will not set any records. But what we're seeing here is the idea that not setting a record is a bad thing for a movie. It's that whole 7 out of... My opinion, I feel like this is that whole 7 out of 10 thing is an insult. You know what I'm talking about, right? Like 7 out of 10 is an insult to a game or a movie or whatever. I swear it's that mindset that we're seeing here. Yeah, if it's not groundbreaking, it's awful. If it's not the best thing ever, it's awful. How dare you? You know, right? Right? 8 out of 8. Exactly. 8 out of 8. And we have to, it's true, we have to absolutely acknowledge that there are people, and I know 3 people personally, who refused to go see Solo because of Last Jedi. There is the unavoidable baggage of Last Jedi spilling over into Solo. And that is, I guarantee you, that is affecting ticket sales, regardless of the quality of the film. There's also something else here. I remember that, Unicorn Puncher. I remember that too. Now, I'll go ahead and paint a target over my face. I felt Last Jedi was a net positive film. It had massive issues. God, it had issues. But there was enough good there that I still overall enjoyed the film. Like, again, net positive by the end of it. There were some really good moments I felt in that film. And then there was the rest of it. But even I, at that point, walking into Solo, my thought was, you know, no, I'm willing to take it on faith, because the ad campaign. This is the other problem. This is the final thing we could pretty definitively prove as to why Solo was doing bad ticket sales. For those of you who don't know me, I tend to not buy into sensationalism in general. Sometimes I screw up. I'm human. But if I see people saying, "Oh, it's gonna be horrible," or "Oh, it's gonna be awful," I just like, yeah, whatever. Right? I don't buy into that. But even I, who tries to be more moderate and strives for moderation in mentality, looked at Solo like, I decided to go see it, and I am glad I did. But how many people do you think looked at Solo, looked at its terrible advertising campaign? Their marketing was literally lying. I'm actually okay with that, theoretically, but, you know, they went into that like, and in addition to that, there's the problem that there was all the behind-the-scenes drama, right? Like, that's just box office poison. Yeah, we had to get rid of the directors. We had to do tons of reshoots. We had to bring in a new acting coach for the main character, right? Yeah, no. This had massive negative press before it even came out. And that's a problem. Especially for, let's be honest with ourselves, a Star Wars film. Now, I'm not saying that there's a certain level of quality we presume of Star Wars, although there is. I'm not saying that there's a certain level of expectation that they need to live up to, although there is. What I mean is that a Star Wars film is going to have a lot more buzz about it. Percentage-wise, more of the world is going to care about a Star Wars game. Or a Star Wars movie, excuse me. Which means more people are paying attention to the little details. I almost guarantee you that there are people who aren't even aware of other movies which have had the same general production problems. That it's not even something that they were cognizant of, right? It's just, there's this movie coming out, okay. But a Star Wars film, everyone wants to know the behind the scenes. The press is constantly reporting on the making of a Star Wars film. And constantly going... I have seen 3 news sites just this last week report on the fact that we have a production title for Episode 9. A production title! Do you know what that means? Nothing! But people are reporting on it because it's a Star Wars film. Second thing I want to talk about. Second thing I want to talk about, spoilers, Mugen, is I want to tell you guys a story. Is everyone cool with that? And I kind of want to share this story, but I also want to tell this story because I think it's relevant. Hear me out. So we went to see Solo. No, and I hope I never do, Balan. Hey, Chief Entropist. Spoilers. Solo spoilers. I went into the theater. The theater we went to see Solo in was reserved seating. We were set back there, J5, J6, like we always are. It's pretty much our set spots, right? Me and third. So we go to see it, and we get there, and our seats are taken. Now, I want to stress this is reserved seating. So we bought these tickets like a week in advance. A little over a week, actually. So I look at that like, okay. Now, I process very quickly, and I don't want to make a fuss because the movie is just getting ready to get started. So I look around, and I notice that there's 2 free seats right here. So I'm like, third, let's just sit right here. And he's like, these are seats? I said, no. But our seats are taken, so let's just sit right here. Okay. So we sit down. 15, 20 seconds later, like almost immediately, guy comes up. I think those are our seats. And I just say, yep, I figured. Okay. So then I was trying to avoid this. So I walk over and confront the guy who's sitting in our seats. Guy, singular, by the way. He is sitting in J5. So I'm like, hey. And he's like, hey. And I was like, I think these are our seats. I was like, no, they're not. Now, I can't sound like a dick. But I want you to imagine this guy just has the most stereotypical dick voice, okay? He's just being aggressive and adversarial, like, no, it's not. This is my seat. So I showed him my ticket, and he showed me his ticket, and he had J5 on his ticket. And I just look at that for a moment, and I'm like, okay. And then I get ready to move on, and he says, get the hell out of my way. Like, just... I look down at him. I consider, in that moment, going ahead and calling the manager on his ass. I decide against it, because I'm not really a big fan of escalation unless, you know, I have the capacity to not interfere with the enjoyment of other people. And I guarantee you that me escalating that would have made the people around us not enjoy that film. By the way, by now the film has started, by the way. We were super late. There were so many issues. That day was just the day of drama. It was the whole day. This is an important note. That Sunday was a crap day for me. I hated that day. Stuff just kept going wrong. I'm not kidding. It was just this after this after this after this after this after this. It was just thing after thing kept going wrong. So I'm like, okay. I don't want to ruin anyone else's day. Screw this guy. So third and I kept going. Then we look down. There's another couple seats. They're not in our favorite spot, but they're still not way up front. I look at that. I look at those. I look up front. I turn to third, and I'm like, all right, are you okay with being up front? And he's just like, and I think he says yes, but I know third enough to know that what he meant was no. If we had to sit up front, this was going to be a refund situation. So I'm like, all right, let's try those 2 seats right there. So we sit down. A few minutes pass. Guy shows up. And he comes up to the thing, and he looks around for a moment, and then he leaves. And I'm like, because I know exactly what's just happened. We're in his seat. So I get my phone ready, because that's right. All my tickets are on my phone. So I'm like, all right, get my phone ready. Pull up my tickets. I have them ready to go. Woman comes up. Excuse me, can I see your tickets? Absolutely. Here they are. This is not J5 and J6. I know. And I'm trying so hard to be nice here, because this isn't her fault. And I know that. I've worked retail. I get it. So I'm like, I know. And she's like, which one is J? If go to the top row, count 5 from the right. And she's like, oh, she looks up. And then I just see her body language change a bit. And then she gets down, and then she's like, okay. And I just look at her. I'm trying to be pleasant. I have this pleasant demeanor thing I do, where my body language is relaxed, and I'm calm, and I've got like a half smile going on. Just, a pleasant face, rather than And I'm just, it's okay, we're okay. And she's like, okay. So she leaves. And I'm like, all right. And I keep it ready because I know what she's done. And sure enough, next person shows up is the manager on shift. The actual manager for the whole theater, not just this particular section. It's a huge theater. So the general manager shows up and he's like, hey. And I'm like, hey, here's my tickets. And he looks at those like, okay. And credit where credit is due. The manager was great. He was like, all right, I understand completely. I'm going to be right back. And he goes back, talks to the other guy. Words are exchanged. I'm trying to pay attention to the movie at this point. There's actually parts of this movie I missed because of this whole interaction, by the way. It's right towards the beginning. It's during the army section, if you know what I'm talking about. And so words are exchanged, and then he leaves, and he comes back, and he's like, okay, so another couple has their seats here, and I'm like, okay. That's okay. Actually, no, I'm sorry, that's not what happens next. What happens next is the couple comes up. Sorry, get my order incorrect here. And the couple comes up, and I'm like, let me guess, these are your seats. And I say it with just this kind of, and he's like, oh no, it's okay, we'll go move. And I'm like, no, it's okay. I'd already turned to third and said, are you okay with going up front? I'd already verified this with him, and I'd already mentally made the decision. I am not going to ruin someone else's day. I'm going to move if they come up here and want their seats. And so they came up, and I'm like, it's okay, we'll move. And they're like, no, it's okay, we'll go. There's plenty of seats up front. And I'm like, no, it's okay. And they're like, no, it's okay. And I'm like, no, it's okay. I've got this. Third, get up. Get up. And Third's just looking at me weird. And they've already left. And I'm like, okay. And now I feel bad. Then the manager comes back, and I explain to him that they decided to move forward, and I feel like crap about it. And I'm honest about it, because at this point, I'm just like, oh, really? And the manager's like, look, let me go ahead and reimburse you. I'm sorry about this whole mess, blah, blah. Like I said, he was great. I shook his hand. He left, and then I got to see my goddamn movie. Now, I didn't just tell that story because I wanted to tell it, although I did want to tell it. I told that whole story because I want you to understand something. I never checked. I never found out what was going on with the guy's ticket up there. My presumption, because the manager went and talked to him, is that his ticket was legit and the theater screwed up and double booked the seat. That's exactly Trayfin. Despite a crap day, despite not even getting to eat properly for another reason I haven't even told you. Despite having a crap day, and despite all of that drama, I still legitimately enjoyed the film. Possible, Savicom. Possible. Now, who wants to hear my biggest complaints about the film? Now that we're actually to the point of talking about the film itself. I have actually asked people if they can guess what my biggest complaint about the film is. No one has successfully done so yet. Can anyone guess my biggest complaint about the film? Because I know this is going to sound so strange, but there is one thing I despised about this film. There's two other things that bothered me, but there's one thing that was just, ugh. Can anyone guess? Music was fine. Music was fine. No, it wasn't too dark. I thought it was wonderfully dark. The robot was fine. She was amusing. The actors, no, they were cool. With one exception. Han Solo having previous loves in life? Nope. Girlfriend? No, actually, she's one of the more interesting characters to me. Pacing was decent. Cinematography? There were issues with editing. Serious issues with editing. However, amusingly, Palayan guessed it immediately. You are the first person, Palayan, to guess it. It's the fuel. It's the fuel. Now, I've had some time to process The Last Jedi since it came out, and hyperfuel irritated me in that film. And the more that I thought about it, the more it irritated me, the more it felt like something that was introduced for an artificial reason. To explain what I mean, I don't care if you change it. I don't care that you're adding something new. This is the AU. This is a different continuity. I get it. But you get brownie points, Blaine. But if you're going to add something new, add something that is either a natural development of the setting or something that has significant relevance to the setting. I guarantee you, the only reason they added hyperfuel to The Last Jedi was so they could have their artificial chase scene, which, by the way, is my most hated section of that movie by a huge margin. I hate the chase in Last Jedi. So they just come up with this new thing called hyperfuel out of absolutely freaking nowhere. And the first thing that happens in Solo is we get a little bit of a text crawl that says, hyperfuel! And I'm just like, oh, no, no, no. And the whole film revolves around hyperfuel. And it's ridiculously valuable. And it's ridiculously explosive. And it's this super rare resource we've never heard of before. And it's this super valuable resource that's never been brought up before. And all of a sudden, it's like the main focus of frickin' so many different groups and so many different organizations. And it's just, huh? Yeah, exactly, Chief Entropist. Now, hyperfuel. Anyways, they also call it hyperfuel. That's my biggest complaint. I don't have anything new to add to that. We could probably talk a way around this. We could probably explain this away, but they didn't. And that's part of my point. To me, personally, it feels like they introduced a plot point rather than a natural or logical part of the setting. Does that make sense? We can explain that away, but they didn't. Right? That's what bothers me about this so much. So. Oh yeah, it's also called hyperfuel and coaxium. And again, the plot of basically the entirety of the Solo movie, the plot, I want to stress that. Not the characters, not the presentation, not the backstory, not the setting, but the plot just revolves around hyperfuel. The whole thing just... That was my biggest complaint about the film by far. Second thing. I didn't like the guy playing Solo that much. Now, Third did. He and I actually had a bit of a discussion about this afterwards. But I felt that there were some scenes where he was okay, and then there were some scenes where he just acted wrong. And I don't mean... Obviously, I don't expect him to be Harrison Ford. Unlike some people, I do understand the concept that if you're playing a younger version of someone, they're not as seasoned or skilled or intelligent or charismatic as the later character. That's logical. That makes sense. That's not what I mean when I say he acted wrong. Sometimes he legitimately just acted wrong, right? Like not how a person would be. I'm just looking at this character who's just like, what is this thing? And the worst part is it wasn't consistent. Like, if he was consistently wrong, that might have been part of the presentation. But instead, it was just every now and again he was fine. Every now and again he was fine. And then every now and again he was wrong. If Star Wars did not exist, would hyperfuel bother me? I mean, the name would still bug me, but no, it would not bother me as much, Bartman Dilemma. I will admit that. It was weird. See you around, Blue Felix. It was weird. I don't think I would qualify it as a full-on negative. Like, if I was rating this by my system, I don't think I'd give a negative for his performance. I would give a negative for the Hyperfuel thing. Probably 2. But the solo performance was just... It was not a positive for me. And my third complaint... This is a much... we're going down in terms of severity. The fueled thing bugs the crap out of me. The solo thing... Okay. But then we have one other very weird complaint, and this is only a complaint if they don't follow through. This film screams beginning of a series. You know what I bet a lot of you know what I'm talking about, right? Right? There are so many aspects of this that clearly leave deliberately dangling threads. And I don't mean the ones that, oh, we're going to Tatooine to no, I mean like threads that have not been tied up yet. Despite the fact that this occurs before/during Rebels, so we know what happens to Maul, and despite the fact that this occurs before A New Hope, right? Like, Kira is the most obvious example of this by far. But there are many different dangling threads that this film just kind of built up to and designed with a clear intent to not resolve it in this film. And again, that only bothers me if they don't follow through. That's why I say this is the most minor complaint by far. Now, so, got all that out of the way. Now, there's one other thing that I think is kind of a neutral for me, personally. Oh, I would love a Lando movie. Absolutely. By the way, did you notice that Han was Han, except when Lando was talking about him, and Lando called him Han, and Han corrected him, and Lando said, yeah, whatever, Han, old buddy. You noticed that, right? That was nice. There were actually a lot of more obvious references to the future movies, and then a lot of more subtle references to the future movies, and I liked most of them. I even like the fact that in Empire Strikes Back, I'm going to be geeky here for just a second. In Empire Strikes Back, there's a scene where 3PO is trying to diagnose what the hell's wrong with the Falcon, and he's like, "Hey, your computer has the most unusual dialect I've ever seen." You remember that? We have an explanation for that now. Like, as soon as they talked about dumping her into the computer, I'm like, oh my god, that's why that happened in Empire. And he's like, what? And then I reminded him of the scene. He's like, oh yeah. They had a lot of little subtle stuff like that. And then a lot of less than subtle stuff like that. I enjoyed most of the references. But people keep asking me about the Solo thing. Can I just say that I do like that? I know this is going to put me as an outlier. But to me, it kind of made sense. And it fit in a way that just kind of made me nod. Like, what's your tribe? What's your people? I don't have any people. Because based on how he was presented, I'm with it. It made sense. He didn't have a people. And that also explains something that I've always kind of theorized on, that I don't believe they've ever covered. The idea that Star Wars uses clan naming schema. Right? Obviously, part of that's because of the alien races, but even the humans tend to go by a clan name or a tribal name that they carry down through generations. It is the in-universe explanation for why House Organa has existed for millennia. It's not literally the same people, and not literally the same bloodline, it's just carrying on the Organa clan name. So the idea of Han having no clan name, that part right there, I'm with that. Because, as Sildir points out, either his parents didn't have a clan name, or he didn't want to be connected to it. And given that he mentions, I'm not good with my dad later on, right? So, I have no family. I'm with that. This is why I'm with that. Yes, Malachor. Now, yeah, I do agree that the officer making up is just kind of whatever. But I was still overall with the Solo thing as itself. Now, that does bring up another very big point that I've heard, and I've heard a lot of people who like, dislike, and are both indifferent about this. For whatever reason, Solo decided to explain basically everything about Han Solo's origins. Like, you notice that, right? Like, here's where he got his name. Here's where he got his blaster. Here's where he interacted with Chewie. Here's where he got his piloting skills. Here's where he came out of Corellia. It just explain. For me, I'm a little bit of a cherry picker. Some of them I'm actually with. Some of them I'm not. I do feel like they went overboard with how many things they explained. We didn't need to have a big scene where Han got his blaster, right? Like, okay, yes, that's nice. I did notice that, Micromono. And we didn't need, there were a couple other things that was just like, okay, we didn't need to see him get the dice back. But I did like some of them. And that brings me to a scene that I don't know, but I suspect you guys are going to disagree with me on. I liked the scene where he met Chewie. I liked that. I liked how the two of them ended up working together. I like how he ended up, I speak a little bit, right? And I liked how they got out and killed the goddamn stormtroopers. I was with that. It was a perfect encapsulation of how messed up the Imperial ground military was at that point in time. It was a good scene for Han and his ability to think on his feet, be stupid about it, and then think on his feet again. Because, let's be honest, that kind of is Han Solo. Han Solo is not the person who thinks on his feet and then immediately wins. Han Solo is the person who thinks on his feet and then screws up, and then thinks on his feet, and then screws up, and then thinks on his feet, and then screws up, and thinks on his feet, and then he succeeds. That's kind of part of Han Solo's character. He keeps trying and keeps rolling with it until finally it works. I'm with that. And I kind of like how Chewbacca in Starvation and Rage would be sufficiently horrible as to take it out on the people tossed down there. I could believe that. And I also agree that Han speaking a little bit of Wookiees makes sense, even at that point in time, because he is the kind of guy who would look into that. None of that bothered me. I also liked Tobias a lot, and not just because the actor. He really was... I agree with that, Gary. He really was, in my opinion, Tobias was one of the better characters in the film. He was an exact counterpoint to Solo. Tobias was what Han would be if Han did not have a conscience. And let's be honest, Tobias is what Han would have become if not for A New Hope. See you around, Javin. That is my opinion. But I really do believe if Han had not had the interactions with Obi-Wan and Luke, brought himself into the Alliance, began to care about this new family, began to care about people past himself and his immediate circle, I think Han would have devolved into Tobias over time. I really do. And I feel like showcasing that, probably the best shot presentation, that's through the whole film, but probably the best thing for, by a wide margin in my opinion, is when Tobias starts talking his way through the situation, and you see him unbuckle his gun, and then Han shoots him. And you could tell Han did not want to. Like, he runs to him, and he's like, no. And Tobias is like, wow, I was smart. I was going to kill you. That right there, that's the perfect contrast between Tobias and Han. I loved that. I liked that too, Seabear. And yeah, he felt like an old Western character. I agree. Absolutely. And I agree with Gary's comment there too. Yeah, he had the gun pointed at Tobias from the beginning. Absolutely. Absolutely. Because Star-Lord succeeds mostly because of his interactions with others, whereas Solo sometimes makes it work himself. So Danny Glover was awesome. You know what my biggest complaint with Danny Glover was? There was too little of him. I'm dead serious. Every scene Lando was in was great. I can say that without hesitation. Donald Glover, sorry, whatever the hell this guy is. He's a good actor. What do you want from me? I do like him as an actor, legitimately. Every scene he was in was great. It's just there were too few of them. There's the initial card game. Yeah, and then of course he cheated. Nice little touch there. I actually thought that was actually probably the one time where the explain where he got the ship thing was with me. Like I was, because it was the one time they usurped our expectations. It's like, oh yeah, okay, this is going to be the card game where Han wins the Falcon from Lando. Nope. It's probably the one time I like that. So then, and then there's the scene where he interacts with Tobias. With it. Oh, I don't agree at all, Tigzar. I think Donald Glover, I think the guy playing Lando, let's be as neutral about that as possible, did a really good job of presenting someone who had a nice, polished sheen of the suave gambler, which is Lando, who gives a crap, which is Lando. I've said this before, and I've said this again. Lando is actually one of my favorite characters in the Star Wars EU. Legitimately. And it's partially because of the fact that he is the kind of guy who gives a crap and doesn't quit. Like, both of those character traits in him, especially in the EU, where that's really exemplified. I love that. Even back in Empire Strikes Back, if we go all the way back to the core, we see someone who has just sold out his friend and his comrades to the Empire. And when he first interacts with Vader, when he first starts bringing up concerns about that, he asks about their well-being and their safety. You notice that, right? It's a nice way to present the idea that Lando does care. That he's not just about himself and he's not just about his people, but he does have legitimately selfless, whatever you want to call it, character traits to him. And I do feel that Mr. Glover pulled that off very well. That he was like, yeah, that the scene where, yeah, that's the scene play. You know the one I'm talking about. The scene where, I can't think of her name, the female robot, the female droid, who I just found funny, by the way. Especially given L3, thank you, L3. I'll talk about L3 in a second. But the scene where L3 gets shot and his facade goes away. Like, you could just see it evaporate. And he runs out into a gunfight to try and pick her up. And he picks up half her body. And it's just like, and you just see him crumbling. You see him just losing it. Like, the facade is gone in that moment. And then, Han and Tobias, let's get him on. And then, because Donald Glover basically portrayed Lando 3 different ways, and I like all 3 of them. He did a good job of the facade. He did a good job when the facade was gone, and then he did a good job of the guy who just had his ship wrecked and he lost L3. There was a way he portrayed it, which could have been a lot darker, but you could just see that I'm going to go back on my ship. You're going to bring me my cut. And then he leaves. So let me explain why I liked L3. L3 was funny, in my opinion. I was amused by L3. But I think the reason I liked L3 best, the best way I can explain this, is because to me, L3 was something that Star Wars has been lacking for literally decades. Someone who acknowledges just how messed up the droid situation is, but does not get bogged down on it. To explain what I mean by that, I felt that if L3 was portrayed more straight, I don't mean sexual identity, I mean like a linear presentation of someone who is an advocate of droid rights, I don't think it would have worked. Instead, it is portrayed as effectively a comedy. yeah, exactly. We would get Marcus if she was portrayed more straight. Instead, like, the scene that personifies her for me is the scene where she's like, "Excuse me, droid, I need to get to this. Excuse me, I need to, okay, fine, hang on." And so she chops off his restraining bolt. He's like, "Here, move." And the droid's like, and he's like, "I don't know. Do whatever. Spread the revolution. I got work to do. Go." That scene personified L3 for me, and that's why I liked her. I'm not going to say she was my favorite character in the film, but I was at least willing to accept her presentation. And, of course, she's the computer of the Falcon. I know, right, Maria Gray? I agree that she should have been more robotic. I will absolutely agree with that. Let's rewind a little bit. So, I felt like one of the things they did well was I thought they did an excellent job of the setting building in the beginning. No, not the hyperfuel. Goddamn hyperfuel. No, I felt a little bit of, I forget his name. Who's the director? The red-haired director. Oh God, I can't think of his name. I actually like him as a director. I can't think of his goddamn name. Ron Howard, thank you. I felt a little bit of Ron Howard's visual influence on several of the scenes, and especially towards the beginning and during the military section, what little bit I got to see of it. Because there's this wonderful bit where Han is down there in the dregs, and we see the camera zooming through the city, through Corellia, the shipyards, and we see, and the camera pans up every now and again, and we just see bits and pieces of what we identify as pieces of Star Destroyers being constructed here. It was a wonderful, if obvious, visual metaphor, and I thought it was a good way to establish the tone. This is about being the ants squirreling around under the giants. And that was the whole film, really. For the most part, we were these guys. We weren't even at Tobias level, and even Tobias wasn't at, I can't remember his name level, and even he wasn't at, we were dinky. This was a very ground level film, and I think that's one of the things I enjoyed more about it overall. That tone and that, Voss, thank you. That tone and that lived in feel, just the camera being zoomed way down there. Yeah, Maul was quite literally the biggest name in the film, and let's be honest, Maul is not that big of a name. Not really. Not on the galactic scale. So, this goes back to something we had over in Rogue One, because Rogue One did the same thing. We had two big fish in Rogue One. We had Vader and we had Tarkin, and both of them were basically cameos. Which is funny because Maul was also a cameo here. But, yeah, Voss... Let me just go ahead and say that I'm glad he was human-like, or whatever the actual proper term is for that, rather than the alien. That was actually a mess-up. He was supposed to be a full alien. But I like it because I like the actor. I can't think of his name. Yes, I know he plays Vision over in Infinity Wars. Someone's going to tell me the name. Paul Bettany, thank you. Paul Bettany, in my opinion, sold that role to me. I feel like he really managed that perfect slice of someone who was morally repugnant, like a horrible person, but was able to walk within lines, like Gary is describing. Lawful evil, right? Like, yeah, he was underwritten, but acted well. I agree with that. Paul Bettany absolutely sold that role for me. There were a lot of scenes where I'm just like, oh my God, like you could just absolutely feel the tension in the room because he is absolutely casually talking about how he's going to murder these people. Not really because he particularly wants to, but because that's how this works. Like, how are you going to make this better? No, I'm going to make this... No. How are you going to make this better? What's your plan? What are you going after? What exact thing are you going to do? Right? This occurs before Rebels. Rebels is canon, to summarize, Mugen. Actually, I believe technically part of this movie occurs during the beginning part of Rebels. But either way, this is before Maul was found abandoned in Rebels. Let's just go ahead and summarize that. Spoilers for Rebels. That's funny, Melicor. So, I did like Voss. I feel like I wanted more of Voss, as weird as that sounds. Voss was also... They do a lot of efficient establishing in this film. And again, I wonder how much of that's on Ron Howard. Because what is the very first thing we see of Voss? Like, a lot of people talk him up, but then we see him. What's the first thing we see? We see him stabbing the regional governor, Imperial governor, in the face. And by in the face, I mean in the gut. Right? Just... That was... And then he just wipes the knife once and said, I might need that later. That right there was the establishing moment. The CGI show is Griffin Knight. The anime-esque cartoon is not. To be clear about my terminology. So let's talk about Maul. We've already kind of segued there. Let's talk about Maul. First of all, let me just go ahead and admit I was surprised by that. I wasn't an idiot. They kept mentioning that Voss reports to someone. They kept saying that he is, under someone, and you know who I report to, and my boss is blah, 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 blah. There were several hints that there was someone above Voss. And I was like, okay. And you know what I was expecting? Shizor. And yeah, I hate that pronunciation, but that is the accurate pronunciation. I was expecting Shizor. And I was going to be like, that'll be kind of cool. And then it cuts to a guy in a robe. And then I'm like, wait, who? Maul. Like, that did legitimately catch me. Now, I have to admit, part of that was because I didn't know when Solo happened in the timeline. Because I'm aware of what happened with Rebels. And I know that, spoiler alert for Rebels, I'm sorry. This is your big chance. Because Maul dies in Rebels. Actually dies in Rebels. So, for whatever reason, I thought this actually happened after Rebels. And so to see Maul there made me go, wait, what? One of the first things I did when we got out, after going to the bathroom, was Google the timeline, try to figure out when the hell this happened with regards to the rest of the show. Oh yeah, by the way, there are actually they brought back most of the team working them all. I thought that was a nice little touch. Anyways, obviously this is before Rebels. It kind of has to be by absolute definition. So, right now. Bringing in Maul was both a very brave thing, but also admittedly a very risky thing to do. Obviously, a lot of this movie was for people who'd seen Star Wars, which is both a good and a bad thing. Let's acknowledge that. This was a movie for Star Wars fans. This was not a movie to bring new people in to Star Wars. Which, again, is a good and a bad thing. The idea of using someone like Maul, who is relatively less known in amongst Star Wars fans, we know who Maul is. We all recognized him immediately. But how about people who aren't really Star Wars fans? How about people who aren't really that into the canon or the series, or don't really recognize this one guy who was basically a non-character back in Episode 1, right? The idea being that this only really makes sense to people who are already into it, for good or for bad. Also, I looked up the exact timeline. I forget exactly when this happens. I looked it up. I think it's like, it starts 13... No, it starts like -10 ANH, and then it goes to like -7 ANH for the rest of the film, if I'm not mistaken. So, I don't know. Anyways. I don't actually have much else to say about Maul. I will admit it made sense. Because we do know that Maul became a criminal syndicate person. We do know that something happened, which, if you're remembering, we don't actually know what happened. And then we know that he was exiled, and that's where we find him in Rebels. And then he joins the Rebels cast. So something's going to happen after this, before Rebels, that based on this, they're probably going to try and fill somewhere. And I'm okay with that. I mean, that is the whole point of an extended universe, right? Also, I agree, Cord. That would make perfect sense. If this is him trying to build up to avenge... Well, okay. Not only to avenge... Well, no, I suppose that... Yeah, basically this is some kind of build-up in order to avenge the death of his brother. Because Palpatine absolutely curb-stomped him. By the way, for the record, Maul surviving Episode 1 is stupid. I am willing to forgive them because they did good stuff with his character. I've said that before. It's the Voyager thing, right? You have a dumb idea, but as long as you do something with it, I'm willing to go with you on that. It's a form of suspension of disbelief. And the fact that Maul survived is stupid. But I do think they did good stuff with him. I'm a fan of Rebels. That's a good question, Hourglass. I'll let you know about that later. When I actually watch it. I've never actually watched Rebels. I've never had time. Oh yeah, his actual death in Rebels, which I've seen that cutscene. That was good. That was good stuff. Like I said, FMNeo. Stupid reason. But they did something with it. I don't have much else to say in... Well, actually, I do have one other really big thing to say. I do want to talk about how much I liked... I know I've already kind of covered this, but I liked the ground-level perspective of the Imperial military. Anybody else? Honest question. I liked seeing the soldiers fighting on some foreign world because they were resisting Imperial rule, and how just dirty it was and unpleasant, and I loved it. See you around, Seraphim. I don't believe I did know that, Hourglass, no. Oh, God, I hope not, Gary. Yeah, no, it really did get that feeling of the Empire at war. I liked that. I really did. What in the world? An Empire movie, seriously. And yeah, it's not some grand crusade. It's not some moral justification. It's not the fight against the Clone Wars or anything, which already got pretty damn dirty in Clone Wars. When Clone Wars, the show, was actually good, and I'm going to say it that way, they did a good job of showing just how brutal the Clone War actually was. But no, yeah, I liked that just... I know, right, Macromano? I also... I can't actually remember his name, and I feel so sad. The alien that was part of the team early on. I liked him, like a lot, actually. I liked it, Hourglass. That would be horrible, Gary. What is wrong with you? Oh, that's what it is. Yeah, exactly, Mugen. Every now and again, Clone Wars was great. And then there's the rest of it. That's right, Jon Favreau was the one who voiced him. I do feel like that alien was really cool. Let's talk about Kira. Let's talk about Kira. I've been circling this topic for a bit. Kira, to me, is the most Voyager thing in Solo. Now, I want to clarify that for those of you who haven't watched me for a long time and don't know my very complicated opinions about Star Trek Voyager. Because Kira, to me, felt like a really... Like they were just this close to something really interesting. And they clearly set up a lot of dominoes for her and hinted at a lot of things for her, and then they never did anything with any of it. Although you did notice the fact that they went really far out of the way to not show us that she, let's be honest, probably has Jedi training. Like, you caught that, right? In addition to the fact that she was able to more or less curb stomp Voss in a one-on-one fight, there's also the fact that she takes out that one guy behind the camera, and they go way out of their way. They go way out of their way to make sure we don't specifically see that. And she actually calls out the specific training she's had, which, yes, as we've all known, as anybody who is a Star Wars geek knows, is an extremely obscure reference to one of the older Star Wars video games that was specifically one of the combat styles that Darth Maul knew. I don't remember the name of the game. Please forgive me. I don't have the research in front of me. Teras Kasi. There we go. Thank you. That's true. That was also in Star Wars Galaxy. That's true. So yeah, they actually flat out name drop Teras Kasi. And again, I know, it's just, I actually played that game. And they, not Galaxies, the other one. Although I played Galaxies too. They flat out just use this as a way to, I mean, it's so obvious. It's so freaking obvious that Maul is the one who taught her, that she is his new apprentice, that she's probably being trained either in the Force or just in the Jedi arts or Jedi killing arts or whatever. And it's probably as part of his plans in general, either against Obi-Wan, which, as we will know, he will develop a grudge against, or more likely against Palpatine, which will fail miserably on. And it's like, and then she will become something more, and then off she goes. Oh yeah, and she'll die, will probably die between now and Rebels. Oh, absolutely, Mugen. Yeah, to be continued, maybe. I brought this up right at the beginning. My third complaint about this film will depend on what they do with it going forward. Kira is... I can get behind the idea of Kira as a character. And there's several things about her that make me interested, that I want to see more of. But as presented, I was just too... It was like, okay, are you going anywhere with this? Are you going to do anything with this? No, you're not. Okay. Sure. Yeah, I agree. Kira's actress and Solo's actor had zero chemistry together. None. Oh. We'd addressed that right at the beginning, Malachor. Unless she's in episode 9. They could do that. No, she's not Rey's mother. Unless she fails miserably and becomes a drunk. Because Rey's parents were drunks who don't matter. You want an unpopular opinion while we're here? I really like that Rey's parents were nobodies. One of the things I wanted most out of episode 8. And I was right. And then they might undo it. Wait, comma. There's some big convention about aliens and UFOs? Question mark. I've never even heard of that, period. As for me, comma, I'm taking it easy today, comma, streaming, of course, period. Talking about the last Star Wars film a little bit on camera, period. And that'll take like a minute to send because I have no connection down here. Yeah, that actually irritated me too, Maz. Absolutely. Like, what in God's name? Like, can you actually... I will find her. For 3 years, all that's been keeping me going is getting back to my love, and hi? Like, he more or less literally stumbles into her, and it's just like... To readdress this point, it's literally the first thing I talked about during this period. Solo did not sell as well as other Star Wars films would and have. That is absolute truth. Solo also suffered from a terrible marketing campaign and lots of negative feedback and buzz, both because of the behind-the-scenes issues with regards to the production of the film and with regards to the fallout from Last Jedi. Those are the truths. But to say the film bombed is actually inaccurate. And There have been a lot of sites that have been sensationalizing just how awful. Oh my god, this film is so terrible. It financially, like it sold horribly. You don't understand. They're going to have to completely pull the plug on all their future films. They're going to have to completely change their strategy. Now, reality talk for a moment. It is entirely possible, if they want these movies to make more money than they are, then it is entirely possible that they will go ahead and pull the plug on this. That they will stop trying to express the EU through movies, and instead will try to express it through some other format. That's up to the money people. That depends on whether or not they're okay with making back their budget, making money, in other words, or if they have to make all the money. That is something that is a valid concern. I'm not sure I have anything else to say about this film. Let me rerun the film in my head really quick. Hyperfuel. I've been doing some research about Kathleen Kennedy, and I'm about to say something extremely unpopular. I don't actually think she deserves as much hate as she gets. I do think that that someone else should be made the mainliner, the central creative focus of Star Wars, but I really don't think she deserves the level of hate she gets. I don't. Looking in context with a lot of things that she has done and said are very clearly reactions, or rather overreactions, to an intensively negative and toxic atmosphere. Whether or not that is justifiable is your decision making, but I don't actually think she is some horrible person. My opinion. I also don't think it's fair to lay as much blame at her feet as it has been done. I agree, Leander. As I said, I do think someone else needs to be at the helm. I do legitimately believe that. But she has also been... Some people tend to forget that she has been a part of Star Wars for a long time. This is nothing new. Like, she used to work at Lucasfilm as early as 2003, I want to say. Something like that. She's been with them a while. But again, I do agree, someone else probably needs to be at the helm. You're right. I forgot the Kessel scenes. Probably a combination of frustration and, as Unicorn Puncher says, a lack of proper ability to communicate. And I don't mean that as an insult for reference. Some people simply do not have the ability to communicate that well. Look at virtually every politician in the world. I'm sorry, that sounds like I'm being really disdainful. I don't mean it that way. I'm just saying there's a difference between being good at a thing and being good at communicating a thing. Let me use a less touchy subject here. How many of you have watched speedruns? Right? I mean, we got GDQ coming out in about a month now, right? One of the things I have believed very strongly, firmly, no really, is that there's a difference between being good at speedrunning and being good at presenting a speedrun. It is one of the reasons why I like the idea of the speedrunners who aren't that good at talking or sharing or presenting their ideas to have someone on the couch who's on the mic, right? I mean, I've been preaching that for years at this point. Like, there's nothing wrong with this. Right? This is my point. I think that Kathleen Kennedy is legitimately terrible at communicating. I really do. And I think that that's something that needs to be addressed. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I agree, the couch totally can make or break. There are some speedrunners who are great at presenting them, and they're awesome. Anyone remember the Bloodborne speedrun at AGDQ this year? That guy was great. Let's talk about Kessel. PJ's awesome, but that wasn't the guy I was talking about. Let's talk about Jesus, here's toast. That's him. That's him. So, let's talk about fear. Thank you very, very much, Agram76. As always, I am very, very much appreciative of all of those Twitch Prime subs. Thank you. So, Savik obviously asks the obvious question. Did they throw out the old explanations, plural, for the Kessel Run thing? Yes, they did. Because that's the really funny thing. I mentioned earlier that the film feels the need to explain every little thing away. And the Kessel Run... I have complicated feelings about the Kessel Run. I can't call it something I dislike or something I like. For those of you who have not watched my rumination on Star Wars: A New Hope, or haven't studied the creation of New Hope, let's lay this to rest. The original intention in the original script was that Han Solo was blowing smoke, because he believed that that the character wasn't even named Obi-Wan at that point in time, and Luke had no idea what he was talking about. I was just like, yeah, I can make the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs, or whatever the number is. And if you'll pay attention, and I mean this sincerely, go rewatch it sometime. Watch Alec Guinness's performance. The way he reacts to that is just kind of a, kind of a thing. That was the original intention. The original lore. Then they tried to explain that away by having the weird Maw jump explanation thing. And then there's actually another explanation for that, which I don't remember off the top of my head, but I know there's another one. And now we have yet another explanation for that, with him being able to literally go through the God, I can't remember what they called it, the abyssal place of doom, in order to do that. And it's like, No, I mean, Mugen, in this point in the script, he wasn't being called Obi-Wan yet. The Maelstrom, thank you. That was it, the Maelstrom. So, I remember, I was watching that one live, Hourglass. Now, what's funny, as Savik points out, Savicom, excuse me, this still applies. If Han Solo's like, yeah, we made the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs, which is now canonically true, and Obi-Wan would still be like, because Obi-Wan would know about the Maelstrom, and would know about the Kessel Run, and would just be like, oh yeah, whatever. Would still assume he's blowing smoke. So this does line up very neatly, admittedly. Here's the thing, though. I know I'm going to get some flack for this, but I really didn't like the Cthulhu thing. I really didn't. There's just this massive Cthulhu monster in the Maelstrom, which we get a lot of shots of, including its skin being ripped off its skull as it gets devoured by a black hole. What? You know what I was thinking when I saw that scene? I've been from one end of this galaxy to the other. I've seen a lot of strange stuff. Now, I don't know if this is true, but I felt like they were just tossing in something weird and horrible, obviously to have a dangerous moment, but so that they could help justify that line. I don't know. Whatever. I'm willing to at least accept the Cthulhu thing, but I also don't think it served any purpose, as weird as that may sound. The danger of the Maelstrom itself was already very high. The Empire doing a blockade, which, by the way, that's actually kind of brilliant in its own way. The only one way in and out of the Maelstrom, and basically gives you an automatic built-in way to blockade it, to control traffic there, so I'm with that. And so with the Empire and the Maelstrom, alright, we're already threatened. We don't need a Cthulhu monster. The Maw was there, and that brings me to my final point. So, you can ask Third about this. When they said, she's in the computer and she's like, oh, she's going through the navigational thing. What do you mean? Well, yeah, exactly, Seabird, because, she mentioned there's something, I forget the exact phrase, but something along the lines of, it sounds like we're getting close to the Maw. And the moment they said that, I actually inhaled just a little bit, just because up to this point, I thought they were just ignoring the Maw's existence, that whole thing had been completely written out of continuity. But I'm properly terrified by a black hole. Or a gravitational singularity, or whatever the hell you want to call it. So I'm like, okay. And then they showed it. Now, credit where credit is due. The maw looked terrifying. That was probably one of the better scale visual presentations in the film. Like, they did a lot of good stuff with the ground level stuff. That looked goddamn terrifying. The maw. Which again brings me my point of why the Cthulhu thing doesn't need to even exist. That giant red hole of death is way more terrifying than and I agree, the maw from EU, which is a cluster of black holes, would have been far more terrifying. I'm not 100% sure where they're going with that, or indeed if they are going anywhere with that. I'm really not sure if they're going to continue having the maw, if that was only one of the maws, if there are multiple black holes there, if there's really an Imperial base in there. None of that is discussed or mentioned. This is AU, who knows? So, like I said, I have complicated thoughts about that whole section. Yeah, no kidding, Hourglass. That's true, Gary. That is true. What would I do with the maw? Ooh. That is a tough one. Me too, Chief Emperor Travis. Great visual there. See, it's funny you say that, Maverick, because I had the same thought. I mean, obviously, the Empire would care about hyperfuel, because it's hyperfuel, and everyone cares about hyperfuel. But for an ISD to be... If we're to assume our writers are intelligent, that means that that ISD was in range to be called in to blockade Kessel basically like that, within minutes. That is very fast, and that is very nearby. Which means, one way or the other, again, if we're to presume the writers are intelligent, this area is very important to the Empire. Now again, the hyperfuel explanation can explain that, but I have to admit, at least part of me, the world builder in me was thinking, is there actually an Imperial facility in here? It probably won't be like the one, the maw facility. It would probably be a different interpretation of it. But I have to admit, I do kind of like the idea that there is a maw facility still there. Somewhere in the Maelstrom. So it would actually probably be Maelstrom facility or something like that, but you get the idea. Of course, there are issues with that need to be explained away, like the giant tentacle monster, but, If I was to introduce Dala at this point, I'd probably completely rewrite her. Probably because Dala's kind of a crap character until later on. What? Dala is someone we are consistently told is this very professional, very competent, brilliant military genius who is an idiot. No, let's fix that. That is true, Hourglass. Yeah, she goes full stupid more than once. So I got a question for you. When the Marauder takes off her helmet and we see the girl underneath, how many of you mentally or out loud said, "Who's that?" Or something to that equivalent? Right? Why do I care? Right? Ooh. In fact, I believe my exact first thought was, am I missing something? And then my second thought was, it's got to be something from Rebels. So I looked it up later. Nope. No idea who that is. Just like, huh? And the problem was, I talk so much about directorial storytelling. I talk so much about presentation. Writing is one thing, but the way you show something is so important, especially to a visual medium. Games, TV, movies, all of them, visual directing is arguably more important a storytelling tool than the words on the page. So they built that up to be this big ta-da-da-da, and then it's... Huh? Right? Ooh. Who is this person? It would be kind of the equivalent... this is a bad example. But it'd be equivalent of if it's like... Ray's parents were, in fact... Bob! And said like it's this big dramatic thing. And we have no idea who Bob is, right? Like, who? What? I don't know. I didn't like that. I did like the Marauders as presented. There's also a ridiculously... There's a ridiculous theory out there I want to share with you, and then there's a more... there's a more relevant theory that I actually kind of like the idea of. And her mother was Bobina! No, what was her name, the Marauder leader? I can't remember her name, forgive me. So, Marauder leader lady, Bobina. The ridiculous theory is that she is Maul's daughter. Nest, that was it. Effie's Nest. I did like that too, Thor. Oh my god, you're right, Max Time. Yeah, it's pretty dumb. It would take some absolutely insane gymnastics in order to make that work. Timeline and species-wise. For those of you not aware, Maul is a Zabrak. Now I got a slightly more grounded theory that I kind of like. I like the idea that she was one of Maul's proteges, like Kira. I like the idea that she was one of the people he was grooming and building up to be part of his new little criminal empire or whatever thing, and that she bailed. Like, she saw the horrible stuff that was happening and was like, nope, I'm out, and started this Marauder gang, using all the skills she learned from him to be a badass, because we do see her be a badass before she takes the helmet off, if you remember. The entire heist scene, she is pretty on top of things, and clearly basically outmatches everyone else there. And she also has that personal vendetta against the Dawn. I am a Jedi, like my uncle before me. Oh god, Zan is going to become the new Lich King, or Queen. Mini Zan, I mean. Anyways. Now, that's another thing. So I mentioned there were issues with the construction of the story. Probably one of the biggest holes in the plot, in my opinion, is that there's a really big gap in between Effie's being the Marauder who's doing whatever she needs to do in order to get this thing, and being willing to peacefully talk things out with the actual agents of her hated enemy. Now, it's one of those things that I feel like is one of those go-with-it moments. I've talked before about this. A lot of writing, especially in Hollywood, follows the just-go-with-it mentality, where something doesn't actually make sense, and the more you think about it, the less sense it makes. But we, through generations of, decades of consuming fiction, are basically trained to just go with it. Damn it, Gary. And so I feel like her just taking off her mask is kind of a just go with it. Because we, the audience, know that Solo's a decent person. Not just because of the future, but because he presents it here. And we know that Kira's having second thoughts. And we know that Tobias isn't good with him. But how does she know that? How does Effie's know that? We know she's tracking them. But where does that come from, right? It feels like they just jumped over a chunk of plot there. Like there's literally a section that's completely absent. Oh yeah, that reminds me. I'm sorry to re-bring up the Kessel thing. You know another reason they didn't need the giant tentacle monster? They already had a ticking clock. They have an incredibly hostile environment. They have the Empire actively chasing them. They have what is effectively a mega bomb of hyperfuel that's on the ship, that's on the way to exploding. And they've got the maw itself. Why did they need to add this? just take that out. There we go. Anyways. I did actually note that, yes, Uthor. Probably. I guarantee you at least some of the inconsistencies. Oh yeah, I mentioned the editing. That's my final complaint. The editing was weird in this film. And we know why. We all know why the editing was weird. But the editing was weird. Like, as someone who, pays a lot of attention to directing, camera work and editing, I just can't, I suppose I should say the obvious. It felt like schizophrenic editing. It felt like... Wait, no. It felt like multiple people were editing it in different ways. And that's true, and therefore that's why I'm not saying much else about it. It's just like, okay. They ran out of hyperfuel for editing. We needed more hyperfuel. And I did too, admittedly, Cord. So yeah, let's one more thing. Someone asked like 20 minutes ago what I thought about the Superplug. I mean, about the big plan for Han to turn them around. I did notice that, yes, Gary. Also, actually, really quick, just really minor thing. Was anyone else like, what's up with the front of the Falcon? And then, of course, they go through the Kessel Run and they come out and the Falcon is now missing the front chunk. And I'm like... Anyways. So, I kind of caught Han's plan pretty much from the get-go. Like, as soon as he went out to talk to Tobias, I'm like, yeah, he's telling him some fib story, and that's going to lead into the real story. Like, that's the plan. That makes sense. Han, by this point in time, has fumbled and danced around and basically failed constantly, with a couple of noteworthy exceptions. And this, to me, felt like the usual Han procession. Fumble, 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 success, right? That's Han Solo in a nutshell. And it also... I really liked it because there's this scene where Voss is like, could you bring one to me? And Solo, like, hesitates, like, I'm not sure it's a good idea. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's totally it. That's actually the hyperfuel. That's totally what that is. And so he brings it out, and he's like, that's amazing. It looks so much like the real thing. How did you find one? And I'm like, no, that... And I'm just sitting here thinking, of course that's the real thing. What possible method would he have to fake that? No, seriously, think about that for a second. With the amazing resources and time, in other words, he had hardly any resources and no time at his disposal, how could he possibly have made this fake hyperfuel? The fact that Tobias bought it is probably the one thing that makes me go, really, Tobias? And then, of course, he deliberately has the blaster under there, to sell it, and then it's like, oh yeah, no, this is the real hyperfuel. Sorry. I also really loved the fact that as soon as Tobias realized that's the real hyperfuel, bam, bam! I need to think a little. And I prefer to be the only one in the room with a gun when I do that. I liked that line. Tobias really was good. Like, I have complaints a lot throughout this film. Tobias is not one of them. He was good. Like, beginning to end. It's a damn shame he had to die. What's funny is he tended to lie by telling the truth a lot. Do you notice that? He did that a lot. And yeah, Woody Harrelson nailed it, absolutely. One of my favorite lies, one of my favorite truths he did towards the end of the film was, it's like, everyone's gonna betray you, right? Except for you, kid. You're not like the rest of us. And he's right. Han says, you think everyone in the galaxy is just like you. And Tobias says, not you, kid. And that is the truth. That is the truth. And of course, it's obvious why he tells that truth. Because he was trying to get him to, you know, to calm down so he could get his gun out and shoot him. And then Han shot him. I loved that. I really did. I'll admit, I jumped a little bit when he shot him. Like, whoa. Okay, yeah, no, that makes sense. Caught me for a second, but that makes perfect sense. Oh, yeah, one other thing. I mentioned how I wasn't really with the actor who played Han. I did like the, for lack of a better term, interactions and relationship that kind of slowly developed between Han and Chewie. I thought that was pretty natural and pretty smooth throughout the whole film. There is only one scene that I didn't buy it in. It's the scene where Chewie is like, yeah, sure, I'll go with you to this horrible crime lord who's probably going to kill us. That's probably the only time I feel that was a misstep. Right there. Which director, too, John? How much of Han was good writing versus acting? That's a good question. I feel like he was generally written well. I feel like he was mostly, like, sometimes acted well and sometimes not. I would have to go back and rewatch the film to really pull out scenes. But I remember the whole time through just every now and again being like... I also feel like there was one... I could actually give you a specific example. I feel like there was too many times where Alden was, like, doing this, like, really awkward-looking grin. And then keeping it, and then keeping it, and then keeping it. Just leaving this really weird grin on his face for way too long. That's a specific thing. And he didn't do that all the time. He did it every now and again, and it's just like... Yeah, we finally saw Chewie rip his arms out of sockets. That outfit could have fit me, but okay, whatever. We'll make it work. What is the next movie after Episode 9? I'm not sure. We know they are at least in pre-production work on an Obi-Wan movie and a Boba Fett movie. There's also a trilogy that is in very early production. I believe so, yes, Mike Romano, absolutely. I agree with what most of you guys are saying. It is my opinion, in the absence of information, that too much of the problem was that Alden was being directed to act too much like Harrison Ford. And he kind of wasn't, and he kind of was, and blah, 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 blah. Like, I just feel that there were issues involved there, you know? I know about Maul's death, Hourglass, if that's what you're talking about. By the way, I have to admit that having seen this, I hope, call me a weirdo, I hope that if they do an Obi-Wan movie, it follows through the events of Solo and includes Maul. And therefore is set before the end of Rebels, to just finalize my thoughts here. Since if we're already doing an Obi-Wan movie, do it there. Where does the Solo movie stand on my list? Hang on. Somewhere in the middle. Specific numbering is difficult. The top is obvious, right? That's easy. The bottom is obvious. That's easy. But in the middle, there's several films which I've never really been able to do a full in-depth look at. I've never actually done an in-depth look at Force Awakens. I've never done an in-depth look at The Last Jedi. I've never done an in-depth look at Solo. And then there's some other films in the middle there too, which I'm not going to name because then people would hate me and kill me with sticks. So I would say Solo is in the middle-ish. Oh, that would have been even better than Maul, Maz. If Kira turns the thing and it's a Sorry Ventress. Now that makes no sense, actually, now that I'm saying it. Never mind. I take it back. Would have been awesome, though. But whatever. What do you mean, Javin? So the Boba Fett movie and the Obi-Wan movie are confirmed, but we're not into the oh, she's dead in the AU? When did they kill her? They did not confirm we're not totally official. We don't have a release date. We don't have a teaser, etc. When did she die? Oh, in a book I haven't read. Okay. Because the last I heard was at the end of Clone Wars in the AU, where she's like, get me the hell out of here. I just want to be away from Jedi for a while. Don't blame her. Yikes. So apparently she's dead. Never mind. Can't do that. That sucks. They could have done something. They could have done a lot of things with her character. Oh well. When does Leia officially meet Obi-Wan? Does she ever? I mean, she doesn't meet Obi-Wan in A New Hope, and I got the strong impression that she never actually met him prior to that. A means alternate. I know the technical term is canon and legends, but screw all that mess. There's the EU, because we called it that for decades, and then there's the AU, which is the alternate universe, because that's what it is. And yeah, I suppose, if we want to get technical, obviously Leia met Obi-Wan when she was born. Let's not even get into that. How many times have you seen people debate the, I remember my mother? How many times? I've debated that. I don't know, Mandartin. As weird as this may sound, to my knowledge, the EU is fully ceased with one exception. Tor is, to my knowledge, the only EU thing that's still going. So here's the problem. Let's all be 100% honest. I know most of you already know this. The EU has as much good as it has bad. There is some very bad stuff in the EU. There is also some very good stuff in the EU. No, I didn't, Javin. Did it not show up? No, it didn't show up at all. Didn't show up at all, Javin. So yeah. KOTOR, it's something I've talked about before. We all cherry pick. We do it to some extent. We all cherry pick the EU. I actually don't know anyone personally. Please feel free to correct me, because I know someone's going to be contrarian in chat, but nobody just accepts all of the EU as canon, right? Including the Star Wars Holiday Special. Yes, that's part of the EU. Including Crystal Star. Yes, that's part of the EU. Including the children's novels, the young adult novels following Jason and Jaina Solo. Yes, that's part of the EU. Right? No, we all cherry pick a little bit. Chewbacca being crushed by a moon, that's part of the EU. The Zun Vong being stupid, that's part of the EU. Tor, that's part of the EU. Oh yeah, that's another one. Zombie Troopers, or whatever the hell that was called. That's part of the EU. The Jedi Jabba, right? Anyone remember the what's the name of that stupid super weapon, like the Tarkin or something like that? I can't remember what it's called now. Did any of you know what I'm talking about? No, not the Eclipse. Not the Eclipse. This isn't a comic. I know that the Eclipse is also in a comic. No, not the Sun Crusher. Not the Sun Crusher. No, it's much stupider than that. I'm gonna have to look this up. Hang on. I get a list of super weapons. No, not the Galaxy gun, although that's stupid too. Okay, here we go. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so we've got the hyperspace nullifier, center point station, the planet president, the shock drum. I love how many of these are in Tor. The dark saber, also the dark saber. The Eye of Palpatine. I don't remember that stupid piece of crap. Here it is. It was the Tarkin. I was right. It's just the Tarkin. Why hasn't the Empire constructed a second battle station like the Death Star that almost destroyed our base on Yavin? Now we know why. They've been secretly channeling resources into the construction of a weapon that could be far worse. Da da da, it's the Tarkin. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. It looks like this. Da 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 da. It's super devastating and terrifying. Da, da. You can see the Star Destroyers there next to it. That's how huge and awesome. And this is the EU. It was built by Lamelisk, apparently. It was apparently a prototype for the Eclipse. I don't even know that part. Yeah, it's another super laser ship. That's all it is. It's just another super laser ship. Because super lasers are the future. I know, right, Gary? So anyways, yeah, point being, the EU has some Drac. You know what the EU also has? Shadows of the Empire. Thrawn. KOTOR. TIE Fighter. The Bane Trilogy. I don't care for it personally, but I will acknowledge that it's good stuff. Absolutely. The X-Wing series. KOTOR 2. Republic Commando, technically. We're in the transitioning period there. Kyle Katarn. Not my thing, but still there. Plagueis. Although, yeah, again, kind of in the gray area. Most of the stuff surrounding the prequels is kind of in the gray area. Some of it's been grandfathered in, and some of it has not. I didn't care for the Darkness trilogy personally, but I thought it was alright. Oh yeah, the Academy trilogy. Not the Academy, excuse me, the Corellia trilogy. Corellia trilogy, which is usually on my recommended you should read list. I usually add a big asterisk to the Jedi Academy trilogy because I feel it feels like an older... It feels like someone who is still getting used to their style of writing, you know? It feels a little more amateurish. Exar Kun is nowhere near as interesting as he should be, and the way they treat Dala is just laughable, as I already mentioned. You know? What's that, Micromono? You don't mind my asking? Or is it the station itself, Centerpoint Station? Personally, for those curious, my actual favorite EU work that is a book, because games would be obvious, is the Thrawn Duology. I actually still like to reread those every now and again, because I love those books a lot. I really do. It's good stuff. I also especially like the fact that the Hand of Thrawn, you know, the Thrawn Duology, basically acknowledges the in-universe mystification of Thrawn as some great mega genius. I like that. Because, if you remember, I mean, I've read the Thrawn trilogy. He made mistakes pretty often. Legacy of the Force, I don't remember that one. Anyway, oh yeah, also Survivor's Quest and Outbound Flights. Those are good stuff, absolutely. Yeah, you kind of do, Dream Whisperer. The Thrawn Duology... Let's talk real for a second. The Thrawn... I guess I can get rid of this now. The Thrawn Duology is effectively the conclusion of the Star Wars EU. Now, I know that's not literally true because the EU kept going. But what I mean by that is that was the end of that particular era of Star Wars. From right here at arguably Shadows of the Empire, you know, going through the X-Wing series, leading up to the Truce of Bakura, which wasn't that great, and the Courtship of Princess Leia, which wasn't that great, and the Thrawn trilogy, the Jedi Academy trilogy. There's another one, the Cournach Cluster. I can never think of the name of it, but there's a trilogy of books set in the Cournach Cluster. I can remember the name of the cluster, but not the name of the books. Anybody? Help me out here. Anybody? The Black Fleet Crisis. Thank you. So we got the Black Fleet Crisis. We've got Darksaber was acknowledged in here. Darksaber, as much as it was not really a good book, was actually critical for the development of the EU. It changed the setting. It had a lot of setting changers. And all of that led into the Hand of Thrawn duology. That's what I mean. All of this is one story arc right here. And the Hand of Thrawn duology basically concludes and ties up almost all of these dangling threads from across this entire extended period. You could end Star Wars with the Hand of Thrawn duology, and it would be a conclusive and decisive end to the franchise. Oh yeah, X-Wing. I don't think I mentioned X-Wing, but it needs to be mentioned. No, I mentioned X-Wing, because that X-Wing series critically bridges Return of the Jedi to the Thrawn trilogy. And arguably the Courtship of Princess Leia. So anyways, point being, this is all one story arc right here. And again, this is why I say you kind of need to go through this, because Hand of Thrawn duology is the conclusion to all of this. Yeah, that's true. Liberation of Coruscant was in the X-Wing books. Absolutely. Then what happens after the Hand of Thrawn duology is a new story arc. I don't like that story arc, but regardless of my opinion, it is definitively a completely new act, a new chapter in Star Wars that goes into the new Jedi, the Yuzun Vong, and the Jason Solo stuff, Darth Caedus stuff. Yeah, the New Jedi Order Act. That's all this stuff. And then you skip forward like a century, and then you've got the comic stuff, and Darth Krayt, and the One Sith, and all that stuff. Hi, Valvatrix. Did I ever respond to you? Yeah, I did. What was that from? Or were you just making up something? I have admitted before that the Yuzun Vong as a concept is more interesting than the execution, personally. I really feel that the Yuzun Vong was not well executed, my opinion. I also admit I have an automatic negative bias because they are evil, because they're evil, because they worship pain. No, literally. They're also massively xenophobic because they're basically Daleks, and they have organic technology. And all of those things are things that automatically make me go, all right, you're going to have to work really hard to make me accept this, and they didn't. I feel that the Yuzun Vong were they were basically the Dark Eldar. They were basically we're evil! And then they tried to do something with them. They had some Vong, traitors. They had people who kind of worked with people, and then they went back to and then they were defeated because they were stupid. And, yeah. Shrug. But you laugh about that, Luxia. There's an extremely high chance that the Vong will actually be introduced into the AU. They already almost were, twice, I suppose, at this point. Once in Clone Wars, and once later, before they chopped that off and decided not to do that. Well, I don't disagree, Dream Whisperer. But, as Takoida pointed out earlier, organic tech is usually used as shorthand for, these are the bad guys. Oh, gotcha, Valvatrix. Okay. I mean, it's right up there with, you can't see their faces, right? I mean, that's just shorthand for, we're the bad guys, right? Anyways. Moving on. I assume other than me, Gary. It probably doesn't help that the Vong story arc pretty much directly dovetails into the Jason Solo arc, which I couldn't stand. What they did with Mara Jade there, what they did with Palayan there, what they did, it was like, oh, come on, really? For the sake of people in chat who might not have read that, I'm not going to go into specific spoilers. We got rid of the thing after all, but... What? Really? Really? Yeah, I really didn't like what they did with Jade at all. But let's avoid spoilers. Let's leave that away, because let's finally get back to that game I was gonna play earlier. We're done with spoilers. We're done with everything. Let's kill and stab and. Oh, sorry. I was channeling the Vong there for a second. Lumia? Hard, Huthor. But then again, I'm one of those extremely weird people. Who... How do I put this? I like the idea that the Force can be taught. Now, I know that's basically not canon. You have to have some kind of Force sensitivity or Force in your bloodline or whatever. That's canon in the EU and the AU. But I gotta be honest, I've always preferred the idea that the Force is something you could learn. That it's like neurosurgery. And I use that as a very specific example because neurosurgery is not easy. But theoretically, anybody with the time, with the access to the access to the materials, access to the knowledge, access to the colleges or whatever, and with the drive to push for it, could then become a neurosurgeon. That's the way I prefer to think of the Force. I know it's not true. It's just that's how I would prefer it. I should say it more accurately. Like, a character can look at this and be like, and they really have to work at it, and they really have to try, and it's just not working, and okay, but they'll stick with it, I like that. Obviously, Jedi lightsaber techniques can be taught to a non-Force user. We've actually seen like 5 or 6 examples of that, including Grievous, and of course, oh my god, I can't remember his name. He's one of my favorite characters in Force Awakens. He's my favorite character in Force Awakens. I can't think of his freaking name. John Boyega's character. I can think of the actor's name. Finn. Thank you, Finn. God. Would they, though, Javan? Would they? Who's going to teach them? How are they going to develop it? Right? How are they going to have the ability to know how to use it? It'd be like something having a third hand that they can't even properly sense. Especially given that I am filled with fear over this. Thank you very, very much, Ifim. But as ever, those Twitch Prime subs are much appreciated, as the dog can attest to. How much... can't you picture how much the Jedi Order would have tried very hard to ensure that no one else uses the Force, that they have a control, a monopoly over the Force? Think about that for a second. And I know I tend to come across as the Jedi Order are evil, but even if we remove morality from the situation, doesn't that just make sense in kind of a cold logic sort of the way? The Jedi Order trying to make sure that they're the only ones who have a monopoly on the Force? Positive, Maria Gray. Right? Right? I mean, that is kind of their mentality anyways. It's just the difference is exactly. The Jedi Order is a political organization. And partially religious. Sorry for being redundant. So the idea of them specifically wanting to keep that under control makes perfect sense. Now, Javan says, well, what about Palpatine? You cannot possibly tell me that Palpatine would deliberately try to engender an army of Force users. Like, maybe a couple of elite Force core, like Mara Jade. The Emperor's hands. Just saying. But you cannot tell me he would want to push that down to the rank and file. And you especially cannot tell me that he would bother. No way in hell. Kinda, yeah, Tigzar. Or the Inquisitors from Rebels, another good example. I could absolutely see that Palpatine would want a sect of elite people, both in the EU and the AU, who specifically were, attuned or whatever. But I can't. I'm just gonna have to disagree with you on this, John. I'm sorry, I can't picture it. You're telling me that I can breathe out my elbows, and I don't get it. I don't get it. I can't picture that. I will, however, admit, let me reach out a hand to you, Joven. I will admit that there's like 5 Palpatines. In fact, the fact that I just keep calling him Palpatine by itself limits which of the Palpatines I'm referring to. Right? No, seriously. Palpatine has had so many different portrayals in the EU and the AU that at this point in time, we have to define which one of these we're referring to. The original Palpatine was an incompetent, relegated bureaucrat who had no real power over the Empire. That was as he was originally intended. Then when they were developing Empire Strikes Back and developing the future of the series and the franchise as a whole, they decided to make Palpatine a Dark Jedi. That was something that was invented at that point in time, and make him the most evil, horrific person who had corrupted the Empire into an evil thing. Yes, that's right. Originally, the Empire was actually going to be a much more long-standing thing. So then we have, I am the most horrific core of evil Emperor, right? Then the EU got a hold of him and stretched him out into 2 different directions. So we have the Palpatine who is basically my preferred Palpatine, the one who is incredibly smart and brilliant and manipulative, and then basically stopped giving a damn once he plunged headfirst into the dark side. And then there's the other direction they pulled him in, which was, I am the core of all evil, and I am incredibly stupid. Which is basically just an extension of point 2, if you're paying attention. Then the AU started showing up. AU took these 2 ideas, the incredibly stupid evil and the incredibly brilliant manipulator, and basically merged them into one. And then the AU kept going and made a 6th Palpatine, which was the Palpatine who did Operation Cinder, and really, I don't actually need to say anything else about that. So anywho, yeah, Brilliant Palpatine is the outlier. I will actually admit that. So the Palpatine I tend to associate with, which is the one that I kind of, read about and played games about for a long time, is 3rd Palpatine, the intelligent Palpatine, who screwed up and went completely evil, but for a while there was kind of awesome. In fact, one of the things I like to point out is that the 3rd Palpatine was not racist. Yeah, Brilliant Palpatine was also in the prequels, absolutely. Brilliant Palpatine, Manipulator Palpatine, the guy who just worked circles around people. In Outbound Flight, the book Outbound Flight, that was the 4th Palpatine, Mandartin. Thank you, Starscream. I'm glad you liked it. Have you seen my proper remake of the FF8 lore run? Because it was really fun going back through that one again and really analyzing it. I agree, Dream Whisperer. I could see Return of the Jedi Palpatine doing Operation Cinder. I cannot see EU1 Palpatine, the 3rd Palpatine, doing Operation Cinder. I could see the 4th one doing it, the one who destroyed his own ship because. But no, there was a bit in the book Outbound Flight, which I do recommend if you've never read it. And in Outbound Flight, there's this wonderful little thing, and he's only there in the beginning. Palpatine's only there in the beginning. But it's great, because Palpatine has an agent who works for him. For the Chancellor, Palpatine, right? That agent, however, is a double agent. He has actually betrayed Palpatine and is working for Darth Sidious. And no, the agent doesn't know. That right there, that's my Palpatine. Right there. The guy who literally has agents working for both of his personas. Who don't know. Love that. Anyways. Yeah, I bet that was a bit of a shock, huh, Starscream? Did Maul know Sidious was Palpatine? I don't actually know. I don't think it ever really came up. Do it. Now witness the full firepower of this fully armed and operate. Yeah, the Palpatine who had plans within plans. The Palpatine who, yeah, he was strong in the Force. But the Palpatine whose real strength, the thing that distinguished him from all of the other Jedi, all of the other Dark Jedi, all the other Light Jedi, the thing that really made him distinct was up here. The guy who was really very carefully manipulative. And what's funny is Palpatine is a specific type of manipulative, specific type of intellect and political power. Damn it, Carrie. He's a chess planner. That's actually the wrong term, but that's the best I got right now. In other words, he's someone who maps everything out way in advance, and he has backup plans. But he's not that good at adapting on the fly. And that's because that's a completely different type of intelligence, a different type of manipulation. The person who could come up with a new plan just right there on the fly, that's a different type of thing than Palpatine. Palpatine was the one who had plans in case stuff happened. And yeah, that was his weakness. There are several times when Palpatine had to adjust on the fly and failed. That is basically why he died in Return of the Jedi. Something happened that he legit did not expect. You can see it on his face. Love you, McDiarmid. You can see it on his face. And then, oh, you're actually resisting me. I guess I'll just kill you then. You know. Because he doesn't know what to do at that point. He didn't know what to do. He didn't know how to adapt. And yeah, Thrawn is kind of the opposite here. Or, not Thrawn, Solo, sorry. I'm not sure why you're bringing up Thrawn. Help me out. He did have Mara Jade, that is true. He did also have Vader, who was very good at thinking on his feet. Why does Rosebud stand for spoilers? Okay. So, let's talk about this. Why not? God, this is like a 3-hour lore week. So... I would argue that the Mara Jade backup plan wasn't a backup plan. That was more of a, I don't know what to do, kind of a moment. If you're talking about the Dark Empire thing, remember the Dark Empire is a separate Palpatine. And again, cherry picking. Anywho. Yes, this is the worst lore week ever. I told you guys. There is a movie called... Citizen Kane. God, I'm tired. There's a movie called Citizen Kane. It's actually a reasonably good film. I actually rewatched it about a year ago or so, and it's actually pretty decent. I like it. It definitely shows the quote-unquote flaws of an older film. So people used to modern cinema, it's a completely different animal. It's a totally different type of film. If you've seen any film in the last 30 years, this is not that. I do think Casablanca is a little bit better, in my opinion. But anyways, I digress. I would say it's above average overall in terms of quality. However, the main point about Citizen Kane, the main background plot, is they're trying to figure out what in the world... I'll give you that, Mugen. They're trying to figure out what's going on. Like, there's actually a big plot hole about this, but basically the gentleman, the super rich evil guy, dies. And one of his last words is... Rosebud, right? And basically the film follows these news reporters, and there's the occasional jumps back in order to actually see the development of his life. And the Rosebud thing isn't actually really that important to the actual plot of the film. However, the big spoiler of the film is that Rosebud was his sled. It was originally supposed to be a snow globe, but we all know that. So it was supposed to be a sled. It was supposed to be the Rosebud sled. That was the spoiler. That's not the first spoiler, but it's a very iconic spoiler. And, now this is very important, it's a spoiler no one cares about. That's why I use that. That's my shorthand for spoiler. Yeah, it was his sled is actually the name of that type of reveal. Because it became an iconic thing for revealing some big spoilery thing. And as the nature of my show is, I talk about everything. I talk about Final Fantasy and Formula 1 and Star Wars and Farscape and Breaking Bad and Cooking Mama, right? I'm a variety show. So in order to try and avoid... I try to... I don't always succeed at this, but I try not to spoil things for unrelated stuff. Like, I'm trying really hard not to spoil things for other things. So some people will say... I'm not going to say it. But, you know, some people will say a spoiler for Harry Potter. Please don't do it in chat. Some people will say a spoiler for Star Wars. Some people will say a spoiler for Final Fantasy VII. And yet I have seen in real-life action that there are people who have not seen these movies, or watched these shows, or read these books, or played these games. And so I make it an effort to try and avoid such spoilers, even when joking about it. Thus, the one thing I can go to for spoilers is the one thing that is not only shorthand for spoilers, but basically isn't a spoiler. You know, the idea that this is the one thing I can go to say, bam! It was his sled. No one in the world cares if I say it was his sled. That's why I use that, Chief Entropist. It is a very calculated move. I have actually thought long and hard about this, really. And I've thought about many other methods I could do to have just an immediate shorthand for spoilers like that. And it remains the definitive example. That's why I just keep using it. It was his sled. It's also a great immediate visual shorthand. You see that and bam. Anywho. Hi, Sonic Doctor. Did I like the movie Hackers? It was alright. I liked Sneakers a little bit better. So, now... Oh my god. More questions. Okay, what do you got, Cord? That's not true, Gary. You and I both know that there are plenty of people who have never seen Citizen Kane who know about that. In fact, I bet most of you in chat have never seen Citizen Kane. No shame in it. It's an old film. And it's not that great. It is not that bad. As I said, above average, absolutely. I have a really weird opinion. I shouldn't say weird. Let's just say that I actually am moderately versed in film history and film geekdom. And most actual film geeks hate my opinion, so let's just leave it at that. Yeah, it's like Doom. That's a bad example. I don't know. It's one of those examples of a thing where it was like it was groundbreaking, right? It was a hallmark in cinematic history more than it was a great film, basically. And I will acknowledge its place in cinematic history. I'd be stupid not to. I would be wrong not to. Kind of like A New Hope. Yeah, actually. Although, I've seen some people who think A New Hope is the best Star Wars film. And those people are wrong! Bam! That's a joke. Don't take that seriously. I hate that I have to explain that. Is my sarcasm really that impenetrable? So, I think we're done. I think we could switch over to Bloodstained. Let me just wait. Okay, we're good. Okay. I'm actually going to switch off the video at this point, so let's do...